My goodness, he is on time. I thought I was going to be at least a minute late, but after all of the well-deserved judgment that I got for being so late to the kickoff on Wednesday, I wanted to try to make the effort, and here we are. So let that be the dawn of a new world of timely streaming. How about that? See, it's all connected. My dear friends, thinkers, and gamers, happy Friday. Welcome back to Tales of Praxis. I am so happy to be here with you. I hope that you've had a rich and rewarding week, dappled with games in whatever form they might have taken for you on this particular occasion. If you're in the States, I hope that you had an enjoyable and safe 4th of July rolling into a holiday weekend. If you have the opportunity to take some time off, if you are one of the many people like myself and my dog who do not fare well with fireworks, I hope that you're doing okay in your corner of the country. I know that in my corner of the country, the fireworks will continue probably through most of the month, but I expect it'll be quite hardcore through the weekend and then begin to taper off. But more to the point, as we roll out of the week and into the weekend, I hope that you are in touch with your center of the value that you find in your life and give to others, and how you can hone those through art and use art as a medium of value communication between yourself and others. All the many things which we try to make sense of and promote on With a Terrible Fate, day in and day out. Hey, Grail. So great to see you. I hope you're doing well, my friend. I am your host for the evening, Aaron Suduko, the founder of WithATerribleFate.com, your first and final source for all literary studies, philosophical treatments, and celebrations of video games as works of storytelling. If you love the literary content of games and find yourself feeling every time you pick up and work through a game as if it has something important to say beyond just the object of the game, and that maybe even just maybe you have become who you are thanks to your journeys through these games. You found your home, you found your people. We have been for 10 years on a mission to analytically make sense of what makes the storytelling of games unique and so impactful and instructive, with still such an untapped potential in the world and in the individual cosmos of the gamer who picks these up and embodies these experiences, which are so familiar and multifaceted and meaningful to those who have been on those journeys, and yet really bear no equal outside of gaming, such that you really do just have to pick up and work through a game to experience for yourself what it's all about. We've been on a mission to articulate and make sense of and promote the value of video game storytelling through pretty much any kind of content we could think to publish, from long-form written content to podcasts to lectures at your local video game conventions and academic conferences to these live-streamed book clubs, which have been so rewarding and really a new mainstay of our efforts across the internet and across the globe over the past year or so. And most recently, to a Discord server. Hey, Pottery, it's great to see you, my friend. I hope you're having a great Friday evening. I know better than to wish you a good 4th of July, but I hope you had a good Thursday for whatever that's worth. Go and join the Discord server if you haven't yet. Our goal is to make really a modern Philosopher's Agora for facilitating conversations around video games, their storytelling value, and the philosophy thereof from just a casual conversational standpoint, where gamers can come and get to know other similarly thoughtful gamers with diverse backgrounds and interests that can help to augment each other's experiences with games in the spirit of ancient Greece's Agora, where really in many ways, at least the good spirit in that sense of modern Western philosophical thought and practice was born. So go on, check that out. Whether you're working through a game right now, you're looking for recs for new games, or you want companion readers to the pieces published on With a Terrible Fate, we have channels for just about everything. And it's a little extra teaser tonight if you haven't joined, because one of the things that I'm hoping to do with this new study we embarked on Wednesday and are continuing on tonight, is using the channel specifically for Tales of Praxis as something of a more explicit companion to these live stream journeys that we're going on together. So it's very much a work in progress, and I invite those in the Discord to let me know what works and what doesn't for format. But as I've said, especially with respect to this game, I'm really having a fun time thinking about working through my perspective and view on the game in this conversational format that we all have together on Twitch. And I think one of the ways that I want to do that at this point in the Tales of Praxis series is try to introduce some more background and ideas of what I'm working with on the Discord, so that we can talk about them and think about them and process them asynchronously. And I think that'll help to add, in the first place, another dimension to our overall study. And I'm always looking for how to level that up, because I'm a philosopher of games and a game-inspired philosopher. Both of those things are true. But also, longtime fans of the Tales of Praxis series will know that I am, let's say, healthily long-winded in terms of the introductions and how I like to frame these games as we dive into them together. So I think that's a valuable part of the study and what this format is. But in offloading and redistributing some of that to the Discord, I'm hoping we'll be able to just allow people to do as much or as little homework as they'd like. But please try to do a little, because I think that'll make it more fun and rewarding, and dive more readily into the stream each night and work through the game a little bit more efficiently. So we'll see how that works. This was sort of the maiden voyage into that today. But like I said, all the more reason to join the Discord. It was a light warm up. Here's the thing. It's fine to joke about that because, as I said, I know I can be a little bit loquacious when it comes to sharing thoughts and kicking off conversations. But when you consider the fact that nowadays my average publication on With a Terrible Fate is probably like a floor of 10,000 words, that was a light primer for the evening. It's all relative, right? It depends on how you look at it. But I am trying, I tried today, and I will continue trying to make an effort to make what I share digestible, open up opportunities for dialogue rather than feeling like too much of a chore. So really, I hope it comes across that way. And if it doesn't, let me know what would be more useful to you. And I'm happy to play around with that, because it is all about the community at the end of the day. And Grail, yes, I am with you. I also don't celebrate the 4th of July except for, preparing to help my dog cope with it, which is, I don't think celebration is the right word for that. If you are interested in some of our other content on With a Terrible Fate, we are trying to catch up on some of the stuff that has been backlogged over the last little while. And so we have a new podcast episode up as of yesterday. But that's the wrong link. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. I don't know that this interface on OBS actually gives me a way of deleting that message. Well, excuse me then while I go and grab the right link. Here I thought I was fully prepared for tonight. I almost was, but I grabbed the wrong link. So it can never go perfectly smoothly, and that's part of what makes it fun, but I can talk while we do that. So this was a podcast episode that this will tell you how ample our backlog is, which should be exciting because we have more things to share with you coming up. But again, it's taking a little while to catch up with it. This was recorded on Mother's Day of this year, so a little while ago, but I tweeted about this. You'll hear the reason why in my voice if you listen to this episode and you haven't yet, because I'll be the first to admit I maybe sound a little tired and worn out on this particular recording. I remember feeling that way when I did it with Dan. It's always really fun and rewarding, and it gives me energy to do these podcasts, but fans of Tales of Praxis might be able to do the math and realize that I was pretty close to wrapping up the very extensive study that I did of Tales of Hearts R. So my mind was very deeply tethered to other things and intellectually all-consuming pursuits at that point. And so it took a little bit of effort not only to get it done, but also then to get that other piece published, please go ahead and read that. If you haven't yet, I'll share that too, and subsequently get this out. But it was a really fun episode. It's one that was a long time coming, especially for Pottery, if Pottery is still hanging out, because among other things, it is the Inscription episode, recorded on the occasion of Dan finishing the game, so that I finally had someone beyond Pottery and actually one other person in my orbit, but someone who regularly joins me on the podcasts, let's say, to actually sit down and have a conversation about the game with. And so the majority of the podcast is in fact working through the ins and outs of our feelings about Inscription, like we say in the introduction, the written introduction to the episode, and like we've talked about before, as Pottery says, and I completely agree with him, this is the kind of game where the best way to get someone to play it is simply saying, I can't tell you anything, you have to play it. So don't listen to the episode if you haven't played Inscription, but go and play Inscription, and then listen to the episode. Let's talk about it. It'll be a lot of fun. But since it was also Mother's Day when we recorded it, we had the chance to talk about various representations of motherhood in gaming. And then also we picked up on something that actually I think Lost Journeyman brought to my attention, because I shout him out in the episode. Journeyman, hope you're doing well. Haven't seen you in a sec, but I've been thinking of you because you usually do show up and I haven't seen you in a sec, so I hope you're doing okay. But the idea of thinking about different rituals that we undertake around sitting down and playing a game, and how thinking about our various activities, even with respect to single player gaming as ritualistic, can help us get a bit more of an explicit self-conscious awareness of how we inhabit our bodies and spaces, and channel our focus around the act of playing different kinds of games. And I got a lot out of that with Dan, as I think did he. So encourage you to listen to that. I think it'd be really rewarding for how it is that you think about your own daily or weekly, whatever, consumption of video games. That's true. Maybe you just got lost. It's in the name. That is fair. What else do I have for kickoff notes, my friends? I think that's it for bigger picture stuff. If you have made it here on a Friday night and don't know what Tales of Praxis is about, succinctly, it is this effort that I've undertaken as really my main area of analytic focus on With a Terrible Fate for the last year plus at this point, working to understand the narrative language of Bandai Namco's Tales of series of JRPGs, one that really opened my eyes to the magic of video games and storytelling and philosophy as a little kid in a Blockbuster who stumbled on Tales of Symphonia, not really knowing what any of those three things consisted in, let alone what they could contribute to each other. And the rest, as they say, is history. And I had the benefit of following along with this series over the years, since it's a series that started coming out all the way back in '95 and is ongoing almost 30 years later. And growing into ultimately now a philosopher of video game stories. And so now that I've kind of developed my perspective and interests in the philosophy of video game storytelling, I wanted to go back and try to make sense of this incredibly expansive and rich and thoughtful series as a whole. Not just play one game after the other as they came out or as I sporadically decided to go back to them, but work through the entire series that we have access to in the West in fairly quick succession and ask, as one unit, an intertext of all these different games that are put in conversation with one another, how can we make sense of what it is that they're trying to say? What language do they develop for helping us to make sense of our journeys through them, what it means to invest in the characters in these games, in the community surrounding these games, and how, in fact, can they impart us with different perspectives and philosophical attitudes to take to our other journeys through gaming and through life more broadly. I call the series Tales of Praxis to that end because my hypothesis is that I think for me, what makes these games so distinctive even amongst JRPGs is that they each contribute one piece to an overall mosaic that gives us a philosophy of action, which is to say particular views, theses, and practical guidance in terms of what it is to make sense of our identity, our place in a world that has a history that precedes us, communities to which we might or might not belong, and to recognize different things that we value within ourselves and without ourselves, and to take those values and the actions available to us and actually coordinate those actions with others to bring those values into beings and chart a future that we feel is worth acting in favor of and bringing about. I think each of these games tells an incredibly emotionally and spiritually salient story, giving us one particular tool to add to our toolkit, which overall constitutes such a philosophy of action. And so if you go in with A Terrible Fate and read the work that I've published as part of this series, one of which I shared in the chat a little while ago, or if you stick around and work through these live studies with us, you'll see that really all of my perspectives on these games and what it is that I'm working towards, trying ultimately to publish at least once on all of these games in order to see the whole picture, is trying to make sense of those small portraits of philosophies of actions, in part so that then we can see the overall whole of how it is that these games are asking us to think about ourselves, our place in the world, and the steps that we can take to bring about a particular kind of future. So check that out on written studies such as the one that I published on Tales of Hearts are available for you in chat, or stick around on the next adventure, which we just started on Wednesday, into, of course, the second localized title, which reached the West, Tales of Destiny 2. Oh, no. Oh, I got the wrong one. That's not what I meant. Oh, but that was a mistake. That was on purpose because, like I said on Wednesday, I'd figure out another way to work this in. Wrong, Tales of Destiny 2, because Bamco, well, then Namco, was hilarious. I'm talking about this Tales of Destiny 2. And to be fair, if you look, you can't say they're literally named the same thing because one has the Arabic numeral and one has the Roman numeral. So maybe they kind of knew what they were doing all along and were just making that much more elaborate of a joke upon us. And we did talk about this on Wednesday. I won't belabor it, but hilariously, the first one that was localized in the US was Tales of Destiny. I think the official explanation that Namco gave stands to reason, that when they went to publish the next one, which is actually Tales of Eternia, they were worried about brand confusion and people not knowing that it was thematically related and series-wise related to the game that came before it. So they called it Tales of Destiny 2. And then 6 years later, I think, they decided, oh, we're actually going to make a sequel to Tales of Destiny. And they were a little bit up a creek without a paddle in terms of localization standards of naming. And I'm still kind of convinced that's part of why we haven't gotten some of the amazing things that they've put out, like a completely rebuilt version of Tales of Destiny and a director's cut of Tales of Destiny, let alone that sequel to Tales of Destiny. But we do have Tales of Eternia, which I contend is an informative masterpiece in its own right, and also with respect to understanding and appreciating the broader series. That's the subject of our latest study. So excited to dive back into that with you tonight. Like I said, I set up some food for thought and preliminaries in the Discord, broadly thinking about what it is for a game to take you on a mystic journey. So not just a game that tells a story about some sort of mystic practice, but which actually guides you on something like a meditative pursuit, as you would if you were a practitioner of some sort of esoteric tradition. And what I talk about in the Discord, and I cite various articles where I've worked through some of these ideas, is that I think JRPGs that present their stories and also the tools through which the player navigates those stories in the right kind of way can actually have a really special and distinctive kind of magical ability to do that, where actually as you go through and invest in these characters, you do transcend the rational and literal content of the plot in order to access supra-rational registers of spiritual resonance between yourself and the characters and their world and your world and beyond. And what I thought through in the Discord was how particular modes of representation in the game that focus on scientific inquiry and also on the structure and foundations of language can be really helpful in giving players clear, tractable methods of thinking about how to proceed through these different registers of meaning across the course of their playthrough, and also to reconsider what it means to mediate our relationship of understanding our world, other people, and ourselves. Because when you think about philosophy of language, a lot of what it boils down to is that a set of questions like, what is the structure of thought? What is it possible to express through thought? And since language and the expressible seems to be what connects us in large part to the world and what it is that we can intellectualize and make sense out of, what does the structure of language have to say in terms of how it is that we can relate to the world and each other and ourselves, and what the limitations of that might be. Another thought that I wanted to seed for you, is that true, Grail? I don't know if that's true. I'm going to look that up. I think you might be lying to me there. So I'll put a pin in what I was going to say. On the back of the box, it looked like it was later. You might be thinking of the definitive edition. Oh, you're right. I got confused because the version that I pulled out for the PSP was a remake which was released later in 2007. So the point still stands. Tales of Destiny 2 was released years after Tales of Eternia, and so I don't think they were aware that this would be a problem when it was published. But you're right. That's my bad. It was released in 2002. Roughly contemporaneously then, I think, with the remake of Tales of Destiny. So there you go. The more you know. I also would really love to play all of those things I said we don't have access to. Speaking of Tales of Destiny, here's the one other thought that I wanted to share with you, and then we'll dive in, which I didn't share in the Discord, but I was thinking about Tales of Eternia's place in Tales of History, following up on Tales of Destiny. And I thought it would be interesting platforming off of that idea of language and what it takes to understand someone else, to just introduce to the viewers as we go on this really interesting point of contrast with Tales of Destiny. For those who might not have played Tales of Destiny, or maybe you didn't play it in a while, or maybe you just read my study of Tales of Destiny, which I encourage you to do if you haven't yet. It's a fun comparative study looking at it in relation to Tales of Vesperia, both games which deserve your time in their own right, but also certainly do in conversation with one another. So I'll share that with you here. But it's interesting to think about just what we saw on Wednesday by way of introduction to Tales of Eternia, in contrast with how Tales of Destiny introduces itself, because Tales of Destiny begins really with the establishment of this relationship between one person, the main character of the game, and this one character who seems inanimate to most people. Most people would look at it and just see a sword, but to the particular people who have been chosen to wield this sword and other swords like him, the sword is actually capable of expressing himself and having conversations. And so people like our main character, Stan, can actually hear what this sword, Dimlos, has to say, and can say things back to him. This thing that doesn't seem like it should be capable of communication is, but only to particular people who have been chosen for such communication by the sword. And by extension, the player has access to what it is that the sword is saying, which we ultimately understand is not some unique ability of these people, but simply this really cool representation of what it would look like for only a certain number of people in the world to have this capacity to really invest in and understand and see someone outside of themselves. Now, contrast that with what we saw on Wednesday by way of introduction to Tales of Eternia. We almost get an inversion of that introduction to Dimlos by Stan. Instead, what we get with Meredy is this entity who looks like a person. By all accounts, you wouldn't mistake her for an object like a sword. And yet, in this circumstance where she finds herself in a new world, everything that she has to say seems like gibberish. She appears totally incapable of communication. And so instead, we have to follow along with the will and just good nature of Farah, saying, I have to take it upon myself to find someone who can understand her and is actually capable of communication so that she can express whatever it is that she so clearly needs to say. I also was thinking, because we've already seen shades of this come up in terms of how the same expression can be represented differently based on who's hearing it and the background context they have. I think something very cool to keep in mind is that even in terms of how Meredy is introduced, notice that we as players already have a really important understanding of Meredy and what she's up to that the characters don't. Namely, if you think back to that first introductory cutscene where we saw Meredy actually talking with someone else on her homeworld and then setting off to Inferia on whatever quest she's up to, we know a few really important things. Remember, that dialogue with Meredy was subtitled, so we actually were capable of understanding her at that point. So as players, even from that scene, we know, okay, Meredy isn't just spouting gibberish. She has intentionality. She's capable of forming thoughts. She can communicate them to other people, like that unnamed gentleman on her home world. And we actually know a little bit about her mission. We know that she's setting off in hopes of finding something that will save her world because her world is in danger. And then later we learn she's from Celestia, she's gone to Inferia, and so we have more context at that point for something that we already know about what she's up to. Whereas the other characters we're following along, Reed and Farah, they seem to understand maybe she's trying to express something, but they're so at a loss because it really doesn't seem like whatever it is that she's spouting has a lot of intersection with what they know as speech and communication at all. And really the only way that Meredy's quest got off the ground was Farah's good faith in her and believing that she had something worth saying and that there was something she was trying to do. The action-based gesture of characters like Queeky, who, like we talked about, was maybe capable of even saying more than Meredy because he isn't capable of something like symbolic expression through speech. And the player who's able to actually guide these characters along their quest and has the background knowledge to have this confidence and awareness of Meredy that not even the characters do. So notice already, not only are we seeing different entities in the game having different levels of awareness in terms of what it is a person is trying to express, but also, I think this is crucial for us to keep in mind as we go forward, what the player is aware of in terms of how these characters are expressing themselves, what their intentions are, is divergent from the other characters, those characters in the party and in the game, and how they relate to the person in question. What we know and what we're acting upon, even relative to the game world, not thinking about anything like, the meta game of what buttons we have to press or the real world circumstances under which we're engaging the game. Our bare knowledge of the game world and its own fiction is importantly distinct from the other characters. And I think it's going to be in that friction playing out and that distance changing and evolving over the game between us and the characters, like we talked about on Wednesday, that we're going to get access to a lot of those themes that I talked about in the Discord. So that's my food for thought, orienting us as we get into this. Remember, we had the pleasure of an academic library, getting some understanding of the world on Wednesday, but also with the caveat and the clear caveat that even the lead academics and researchers of the world don't really understand how it works at its foundations and are trying to develop the best available theory as they go along. And now, hopefully next, we're going to find Reed and Farah's childhood friend Keele, also a researcher, someone who is in fact at an observatory, maybe even trying to collect more data and see what he has to say about what's going on in the world. Maybe even if the world is at risk of destruction, because the last thing we heard was he's spouting something about chain world destruction theory or something to that effect. And we'll see where we go from there. But keep that in mind again with what I was commenting on with respect to scientific attitude towards understanding the game and world. I already alluded on Wednesday to the fact that one of the named figures in the game that we haven't really understood yet, Seifert, actually takes his name from a real-life astronomer. Now we're going to an actual observatory to meet one of our friends. Science and spirituality both loom large in this game, and that's worth attending to as we go on as well. All right, my friends, I think that's what I've got. We're going to dive back into Tales of Eternia, and I welcome you back to Tales of Praxis. Yeah, sounds like someone's Mystic Arc Grail. We had other stuff last time, right? I think I said it sounded like a Yu-Gi-Oh attack. I think you said something else. And you're right. Exactly what we were saying about the academics trying to make the best sense they could and develop the best models of something that they don't feel like they at bottom really grasp. that has a lot of intersection, not just with science in the real world, which is part of the scientific method that I was pointing to, but also in terms of understanding the structure and the limits of language, right? Where if we think about, as philosophers do, the nature of thought, you might think that one of the reasons it's really important to understand that is that it also shows us the limit of how far our understanding can go. So what are we capable of really saying that we know versus the things that we might really want to know or strive to get more certainty about, but can never really fully and foundationally grasp. So I think you're right on the money there. I wonder that too. I haven't read a lot about the development of these games, although obviously I've learned more in conversation with you and everyone else as we've moved forward with them. But I do wonder the extent to which each of them starts off as a standalone idea in terms of a compelling story to tell versus playing off of whatever game came before it. Because they all do both of those things so well, I feel like it very well could have come from either source or a combination or some third option. Do you want to say hi to everyone before we go forward? She's excited now. I think she's a little nervous because she knows this is around when the loud noises have been starting. But she's doing as okay as she can. She's our additional party member, always, lest we forget. Cool. Off to the observatory. What's it called?
Mountain climbing is no easy task. Let's go prepared.
She's not going to remind us of the place name. She's just reminding us we have a mountain to climb.
Let's do it.
Oh, I'm glad, Grail. I know. Even when she's nervous, she appears stoic to me too. I try to look to her as my role model in most things, as I do with Repeat and Tales of Vesperia, so I aspire to that level of stoicism and faith in oneself and others that she always seems to espouse.
Let's do it.
Oh, you know what I almost did? This will tell you how recently I've played this game. I almost went back to town before we left to get a dark bottle because I'm a little concerned about being underleveled as we go forward. It's not a concern yet, but it became a concern to me at a certain point in the early game.
Okay!
So I don't think we need to go back and do that now, but next time we're in a town, I might do that, or you might consider reminding me. Aaron, you said it might be useful for you to get some dark bottles, man. And have you ever seen me use a dark bottle in one of these games? I don't think so. Also, I was thinking about this earlier. It follows from everything else that I've said so far, but thinking about the overall trajectory of the series, like you were saying, Grail, I think this is an interesting thing to consider too. We are already several hours into a game where one of our party members is incapable of communication with the other ones. We already were kind of comparing Merity with Sophie last time, and I think there are a lot of great reasons to do that. But keep in mind, Sophie is a great contrast class because even when she appears from an alien world with no understanding of herself, she has a basic grasp of the native language and so can communicate in some bare competency that Merity does not have. If anything, speaking of beloved dogs, Merity right now almost seems to have more in common with Repeat, because it's not as if there's no other party member that's like that. Repeat is like that. He has plenty of thoughts and things to say and intentions and quest lines. Read more about it in the article that I shared a little while ago. But one of the key aspects of his character is that he can only communicate as a dog can. He can't speak the language available to the human party members. So interesting that the best model we have in the series for how Merity is presenting so far is a non-human one. Mount Minchi. Here we go. Oh, actually, it occurs to me I should save before we go there. But there you go. You can get a nice little preview of another great music track coming up. I don't want to jinx myself at the start of the stream, but I've been absolutely killing it today because do you ever have one of those nights of sleep where you wake up and you just feel like totally aware of yourself in the world and say, man, I wish I could sleep that well every night. What happened? I had a night of sleep like that, and for the life of me, I couldn't really tell you why, but I'm feeling tuned in and engaged and ready to study the next leg of this game with you all. I'm curious to see how far we'll get, because this is another interesting thing about having played through this game quite recently on my own, and the fact that it was developed pre-streaming. I have a very clear awareness of upcoming touchstones in the story and benchmarks that might be good points to wrap up for the evening and things like that, and sort of like chapter conclusions and little arcs, even though the game isn't literally chaptered or anything like that. But I don't really have a firm sense of the pacing at all in terms of how long it will take us to get there. So it'll be interesting for us to find out together how far we actually get in a single focused night. Let's find out. But I think we could make some decent headway. This is interesting too, because I think one of the things I might be robbing you of from the fact that I've played this recently is solving some of the puzzles. So we've mentioned this before, but since we haven't played one of the early Tales of games together before, I'll perseverate on this for a moment. The earlier games are, in a different way than later games, puzzle-based. And already you're starting to see this here. That's why I've paused to show you here. And you'll see as we go through, like, the dungeons get more elaborate in this way. But to navigate and figure out how to get from point A to point B, oftentimes it requires a lot more lateral thinking in terms of looking at your environment in different ways, seeing details that are maybe obscured from the player's point of view. Again, a lot that this game in particular shares with Final Fantasy IX, which was released in the same year. And so, for instance, I remember playing this through with Dan a little bit when he visited me over the holidays last year. And now, having done it once, it seems obvious to me that what this screen is showing is, okay, to Reed's, I guess Reed's right, but our left is a boulder. And this flashing thing is indicating where you need to put it. And then that will block off that hole down there, because otherwise monsters will keep coming out of that hole and never stop. But there's not a lot of other indications in terms of game tutorials or models that we get from other Tales games to suggest to you that's what you need to do. So actually the first time through, it can take a while to figure that out. So I'll try as much as I can, maybe not to spend that much time on it in every dungeon area, but I'll point out sort of why the puzzles are interesting and why they might have taken Aaron on the first time through a while to figure out, even if it takes less time on this second playthrough. Oh, the game could be a little quieter. I'm trying to, I mean, the mic is pretty close. I can put it closer to my mouth, I guess. Here, I'll lower the volume on the game to a little bit, Grail, but thank you. Yes, please continue to be responsive in terms of the volume. Okay, I lowered the game audio a little bit, like the master volume. But like we talked about last time, it might also just be an issue with the mixing for the background music. So let me know if that messed things up and we can continue to play with it. Hey, Mr. Henry. No, I am not. We are focusing much more on analyzing the philosophical and narrative content of the game. So we're playing on normal mode. But we're playing on hardcore mode in terms of understanding what it is that the game has to say and how it relates to other games and how you can take practical, intellectual, and spiritual lessons from it, which to me is the more important hardcore mode. So stick around if you're interested in any of those strata of the different kinds of value you can take out of games. I should have gone up and done the other boulder first. I wasn't really thinking that through. That was definitely a certain kind of hard mode, Grail. I won't dispute that. Case in point, the fact that Tales of Xillia 2 is only shelved because Aaron still needs to grind and then take us back to it at some point. Don't let me out of that. I know, I hope I called them monsters when I was referring to them, because I always think of them as zombies too, since obviously, look at the sprite, they look like zombies. But yeah, when you get into a battle with them, they are definitely golems. I'll remind you, golems, esoteric and mystic creature from the tradition of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. I wouldn't say at first blush that this game is explicitly a Kabbalistic game. There are Kabbalistic games in the Tales of series, like we've talked about before, but golems are also one of those creatures from a particular cultural tradition that have just become popularized in all media, to the extent that they show up in many places where they don't quite belong and also don't quite represent what they do in Jewish mysticism.
Sonic Blade.
But yeah, these are rock golems. Remember, and I guess this is interesting, that one of the first monsters we're seeing is a golem, because one of the really cool things we learned in the Minchi, or one of these days I'll say that right. One of the things we learned in the Minchi library was that monsters are distinguished from living beings because living beings have been observed as having a preponderance of water cramels within them, presumably animating them or otherwise giving them life, whereas monsters do not. So this is a world where there is a clear metaphysical distinction, at least a prima facie one, between monsters and other beings. Is the volume better now, Grail? Can you hear me without suffering?
Lightning Blade. Sonic Blade.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let me know if I need to tweak any of the finer levels.
Sonic Blade.
The music is so good, and the voices are so important that I don't want to drown out either of those with mine. Nietzsche Town! Oh, Nietzsche Town. God, now I'm trying to think. I feel like Nietzsche hasn't come up in Tales of Praxis at all. Does he show up really obviously in any of the games? Well, here's one really localized place where he shows up, and I think I might have pointed this out at the time. So, in Dawn of the New World, which is, a very Norse game in the tradition of the Xillia games in the series, you might remember, actually, both of these attacks, really curiously, come from traditions other than Norse. So, Ratatosk, his, characteristic attack, by which Richter immediately recognizes, oh, this dude's Ratatosk once he uses it, is called Ein Sof Hour, which, surprise, surprise, is something else from Kabbalah. That's in reference to the Ein Sof, the unknowable divinity, which is prior to not only creation, but also to God. But you might also remember Richter, he has this special counterattack that he can use to actually negate Ein Sof Hour and send it back at Ratatosk, and that's called Eternal Recurrence. And Eternal Recurrence is a Nietzschean idea. This idea that life and culture very roughly just iterate inescapably across time. And I think kind of rots itself out without sort of the will to power that the Übermensch makes possible. My Nietzsche is super duper rusty, but I think that's roughly what he has in mind when he talks about eternal recurrence.
We win.
Dude, and even with the stuff that I've said about Dawn of the New World in other articles, there's just so much more to say, especially about that relationship between Emil and Ratatosk and Aster and Richter. I don't know if this came out well enough when I wrote about it in my study on Chester, but it really hit me this most recent time through Dawn of the New World for Tales of Praxis. I was thinking just more about Richter, and I think he's such an interesting and unusual character, and I don't think people give him enough credit for what he uniquely contributes to the story or the kind of antagonist he is within the series. Because, actually, now that we've played through Tales of Xillia, I'll say I feel like he's almost a little bit like Gaius in the sense of being one of those villains who's also kind of a friend and who we really like, we have to defeat, but the goal is also really to not just understand, as is the case with most antagonists in the Tales series, but actually befriend seen through a certain light. And man, that whole quest line with him, helping him put together what he needs in order to enact his plan in a way that wouldn't destroy the world. There's so much in there. So I think if I were to go back and do a standalone article on Dawn of the New World, which I think I would like to do at some point, just to really try to do it justice without reference to the other games, there are some things in that game that I think are just really special on their own terms, even without thinking about Tales of Symphonia or Fantasia. And I think Richard is one of, excuse me, Richter. I think Richter is one of them. Talking about Tales of Graces got me all confused. Talking about Richard. But yeah, you could do a whole study just thinking about, all right, what exact gesture is Ratatosk making when he uses Ein Sof Hour and says darkness devours, and what is it that Richter is retorting with when he uses eternal recurrence? Yeah, that's right. They're just three ways of saying the same thing. You got it. We did it! We solved the Tales of series. We beat the final boss. Okay, good. Even just the drum line in this track is so satisfying to me. Really keeps me going. To see, that's the key. And the more you look, again, it's not like a puzzle in terms of intellectually stressful, but there's more to it than meets the eye. Like if you look, there's a gap in that circle of monsters. It's like a circle that ought to have 4 members but only has 3. And so because it's this infinite chain until you drop the boulder, it's showing you, without giving you any kind of explicit guidance, okay, what you want to do is fill in that gap and almost act like a monster in order to get around them and then plug the hole. And actually, as I say it that way, the way to overcome them is to act like a monster. I feel like even that might have an interesting level of subtle but important symbolism in terms of what the broader story is concerned with. But more on that later. Excellent. Poleaxes are also just good in an outsized way in the early games. That started with Cress in Tales of Fantasia, and I don't think it really went away until we were thinking about Lloyd, who didn't use polearms in Tales of Symphonia. This one might be hard to manage with the monsters there, but we're gonna try. We're gonna try. Oh no, gotta get rid of one of them. That's all right. We don't want to deprive ourselves the opportunity to level. Like I said, that will hurt us. Mark my words. I don't think it's as easy to think about skill checks in the modern sense in older games all the time. Because I do think like the current language for them is not something that's always been around, but I'll tell you, one of the reasons that I'm anxious is that Tales of Eternia definitely has an early game skill check, and I was not prepared for it the first time through. This time we're going to try to be prepared. Of course, they can just move right through the boulder.
Let's do it.
No, you're absolutely right, Grail. If anything, Luger was a callback in that sense to another thing that was present at the beginning of the series and then was steered away from.
Lightning blade. Did you think you'd win?
Even, I understand why you would point to Reed and Cress and Notchstan, but I'll also point out one of the really interesting things about Tales of Destiny, which I don't think I really talked about in my analysis, is like the main characters. The thing that seems important about them to the story is that they were chosen by and are therefore capable of using these special swords who are characters, the Swordians, and which have just ridiculously powerful arts and levels of their own and can do things that no other equipment can. And yet, those characters are also capable of using just a wide range of regular weapons. So you always are choosing to use the Swordians or a regular weapon. You're never really called to use the Swordians just because they're important to the game. And I think that's a really powerful and cool way of representing parts of the story and character relationships through let's call it a wide arsenal of available weaponry as well. Well, keep talking, Grail. Maybe I'll make the original Destiny the next one we play, because I desperately want to play the director's cut, but the original has a lot to recommend it too. And it might be interesting to go backwards and see even more about the origins of the series after we've seen Tales of Eternia.
Let's do it. Lightning blade.
Because yeah, the director's cut is very different. Which is one of the reasons I'm desperate to play it.
Lightning blade. You can't beat me.
All of the levels, all of the levels. No, you didn't. You were super duper helpful with Innocence, and thank you again for that. And that is on my list once I get my life a little more sorted. But I would, yeah, if you ever have the ability and bandwidth to do that, it would not go unappreciated, nor unused.
Sonic blade. Sonic blade. You can't beat me.
All the games are like this, but especially in the early ones. I'm saying this out loud so that I can remind myself to keep focusing on it. I just remembered it is also important to try to equally use all of the skills that you have available to you, because a lot of the more powerful skills are locked behind having used more basic skills and multiple basic skills a certain number of times.
Sonic.
Also, did you notice, so I didn't point this out last time, not only is Merity in the party, so is Queeky! Queeky is a party member, not a fully fledged one, but he fights alongside Merity. And actually, if you focused on what Merity is doing, you'll see a pretty important part of her gameplay is how she sends out Queeky to engage with and largely distract enemies while she's on the back lines casting spells. So shout out again to Queeky. I love him so much. We're going to try to talk about him a decent amount through this study of ours. And he is not, he's not a purely external mascot in the way that, say, someone like Noish, I guess, is. That's not fair. You can ride Noish on the field. What's one that doesn't go into gameplay at all? Can we think of one? Tails might not have one. So even if you think of Rollo, I mean, Rollo doesn't involve himself in combat, but he's quite important to the kitty expeditions, or whatever they're called. So that might be another cool feature of Tales also. As riddled as they are with mascots, the mascots always serve some function within the gameplay.
Let's do it.
Hoodle, I would say Hoodle kind of still counts because he helps you in finding other owls, which I would say counts as an aspect of gameplay engagement and world navigation. Bienfu... Yeah, Bienfu might be the right example. I haven't been paying enough attention to health. I hope this doesn't kill us. Oh, that's right. So something that I'm also reminding myself of now is that you might notice there is no limit on how frequently you can use items. That doesn't help you as much as you would want it to, but it does help you. So it's good to remember now rather than later. Oh, that's true. Bienfu is how Margula uses her arts, so he's technically
Did
involved
you
also.
think you'd win?
No, we love Bienfu. We love all of them. I don't think there's a mascot that I hate. Yeah, there's still technically a cost. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that it perfectly balances out in that way time-wise. What I will say is we talked last time about how the combat in Tales of Eternia feels... I said more fast-paced at the time. I would also add just a little chaotic in some battles. And I think that aspect of just how frequently everything is coming at you balances it out, because even while it might be a little easier to use items, enemies are interrupting and putting pressure on you a little more frequently in a lot of cases.
Lightning blade.
If you know, normalize for difficulty level and things like that.
Sonic blade. Sonic blade. Sonic blade. Lightning blade. Lightning blade.
Okay, cool.
You can't beat me.
You can't. You simply can't. Thing! My favorite mascot. And again, I know Grail knows this because he didn't suggest that this wasn't the case, but for the benefit of everyone else, Mew, also a useful mascot. The Sorcerer's Ring would be completely inert without him. And also, we wouldn't have key aspects of the synopsis when Luke is unavailable to leave his diary entries. I'm not going to go fight the enemies again, but I did want to just rest so that everyone was a little safer. Notice, I'd forgotten about this, but one of the interesting dynamics of camping in dungeons is it will restore your HP, but not your TP. I'm also reminding myself that now might be a good moment to get in the habit of cooking. If we have anything useful, we can cook. One boosts attack, one that cures abnormal states. I think that's all we have for the moment. I'm gonna wait until we get a little further, but try to remember to use beef stew. I don't think we need it now, but we might need it in a moment. Oh yes, and because we use the boulders, now the monsters don't come back. I was afraid we'd have to run through them again. But yeah, that stays. Okay, I think there might be a fight coming up, so I'm gonna preemptively use beef stew. Alright! Attack temporarily increased. Yeah, I think there is a base level of just many dynamics to keep track of in a way that even Tales of Fantasia set the tone for way back in the day, especially when other things were still turn-based, right? I mean, that's one of the countless things I really respect the Tales of series for. They put a flag in the ground and said, no, we want our battles to feel real-time. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Lightning blade. Sonic blade.
Triple blossom.
Sonic blade. Sonic
In
blade.
I don't know if I'll do this, but in a perfect world, and Grail, you know the reason why this is the case, I would also make an extra effort to try to play with every single character as we go through this. So I don't know if I'll do that, but I'm considering it. Maybe after we get through the first skill check. It's a good question, Grail. We seem to have the sense that monsters are not, at least in the same way as people and other living things, naturally occurring. So that does raise the question, is there a different natural mechanism that causes monsters to come into being? Or, as you say, did someone design them for a particular purpose and put them there? I think that's a good question to ask in this game. Oh, not even camping on the field restores TP. That's good to know. Never miss an opportunity to save in Tales of Eternia. No, I do believe you. I do. I was just trying to get a handle on on the battle system again before I switched around. Here's my problem too. Like, granted, it'll be great to play and get familiar with Farah. Farah is also the healer right now. And I worry that our performance might tank if we do that. But you know, let's try it. Why not, right? You're right. The stakes are not going to get any lower than this while we're just starting out. So here, I will look at Farah's skills. I think I want the healing skill on one of the bumper shortcuts. So we have Palm Strike, Triple Blossom, Sonic Fist, and Swallow Dance, my beloved. Alright. Swallow Dance on up seems pretty regular. Maybe Palm Strike down. Triple Blossom. No, I probably want Palm Strike here. No, no. Obey me! Let's try that. I think it might be one of those things that you have to actually go back to him to set it. I don't know that it unlocks in the menu. That was kind of my half memory of it. Which makes the dojo all that more important among the many other reasons that it is. Alright. The Mount Minchi Observatory. Alright. We're hitting here at the first hour of the stream. I would say that it's not bad time.
It looks like nobody is here.
Hello? Keele?
It's useless, I tell you.
My man! My boy. My man boy.
Ah! Yakunsu!
Cranial movements are causing a buildup in the globule distortion field.
New term. They might have mentioned this briefly in Minchi, but globule distortion field.
And if you're saying that the Orbis wave has no relationship with the Doctark effect, you need to rethink the basics of craniology.
Many new terms. 3 new terms. Orbis wave and Doctark effect and cramolology. But notice, cramolology, we got that last time, and you can just compose that out of cramos, the study of cramos. And Orbis wave, you might suppose, has some connection with the Orbis barrier, which we know is that membrane-esque layer in between Celestia and Inferia. So this is going to be the challenge. As you have already seen and will see, Keele is very much the term and jargon-heavy academic, but I would put to you, if you actually stop and think and decompose what it is that he's saying, more times than not, you can get a sense of what it is that he's talking about.
Keele?
Huh? You're not from Minch University?
Oh, that's funny. He says Minch, even though the rest of them say Minchi.
It's me, Farah Orsted. Farah, your childhood friend. It's been a long time. How are you?
I forgot to mention this. Something else I looked up just for fun, which will tell you everything you already know about Farah. Her name is an Arabic name, which means joy, or maybe even more interestingly, because it has a somewhat religious connotation, rejoice, or happiness.
Farah?
You've really grown. For a minute, I didn't recognize
That's
you.
okay, Farah. All of Japan recognizes Keele.
Well, it's been 10 years. Of course he's changed.
Back to the group notice.
Is that you, Reed?
Hey there.
Yippee! The old gang is back together again.
Yay, nothing has changed. Okay, fine. One thing has changed.
Who's this?
Her name is Meredy. We came to see you because we want to help her.
She only speaks Melnix. Can you help?
Melnix language? Who is she anyway?
We don't know. That's why we're here.
I'm going to point out, because there are a lot of these, like I said on Wednesday, I have a deeper thesis in terms of why I think the voice acting is really cool and important for what the game is trying to say. But even in lines like that, I think those line readings absolutely just on their face hold up as quite good. Like the level of just annoyedness in Reed's voice at how tedious he finds this, and this fucking guy doesn't understand what we're trying to tell him, and he thinks he's so smart. Like you get a lot of color in some of these line readings if you just stop and appreciate them.
Melnick's language, huh? Okay.
Keele has really made something of himself. I'm so proud of him. Don't you think so too, Reed?
Let's catch up to them.
Okay.
My name, Keele Zabel. You... who? Bye bye, nonkoi monton setu nemyo. I'll get better as I ease back into it. Montoyu minkon simple wayotanyo busu. Evie is not happy with my Melnick's pronunciation. You who? Where? Montoyu nonpon Benson Rio Fanton. Montono Runson Yinkin Bonlenton Royi. Come from? Hey, are you getting anywhere? No, you can't be. You understood? I knew you could do it. What is it, Keele? She said she's from Celestia. Celestia? Remember, that is the other world in the sky, which thousands of years ago had contact with Inferia, the Inferians take to be the case, and from which nothing good has ever come. That is the long and short of what we learned last time. You mean she's from that world hanging in the sky upside down? It's a good question, Grail. I found myself thinking about that the first time, too. Oh, come on now. Merity is a little weird, but she's obviously a regular person. That's right. Celestians are supposed to be. Volume 2, Chapter 2 of the Leonoa Encyclopedia says that Celestians are a ferocious, man-eating race. It really bums me out we didn't get the chance to read about that when we read chapter... well, I guess we didn't see which chapter we were reading, but we did read Volume 2 of the Encyclopedia. That was in the library. She couldn't possibly. Well, true or not, that's what she said. Monfonyan, Benson Leo. What's that thing on her head? It looks like a stone. Monfonyan Pentintuli. I don't think she liked that. Ow, Keele. I think I know what she just said. She just called you a pervert. Quick. My boy. I think that was Queaky for I agree with you. Anyway, we have to find out what she wants. Oh, here it is. I was waiting for another one of these. So here's half a thought that I have on this, Grail, in terms of your question of why didn't they voice it in connection with the broader thinking about language. Of course, there's one just prudential explanation you can give saying, oh, there was only so much space on the disc. They didn't want to voice everything, so not everything's going to be voiced. Fine, maybe true. I don't think that's very interesting. But I think you can also give an explanation in terms of how the game wants you to engage with it and what it's trying to express. Where notice, this is the first time that we're seeing side by side the text that we can understand in our language, which in this case happens to be English, but presumably if you were playing this in Japanese, it would be Japanese, alongside the Melnick script, right? And so I think in this kind of literary context where there aren't voices for us to grasp onto, our attention is fully put on just the actual script that's being used and seeing those two different symbologies, those two different texts, those scripts side by side. So that's one of the things that I really love about older games. So it's nice that it comes up here this early. I think the way that they play with things like different texts and some things being voiced and some just asking you to read and give your own voice to things in your mind, as we're doing with me voicing these lines, it really increases the overall texture of how it is that you're interpreting meaning, and grasping the language that's used to express things within the game, which again in this game takes center stage in terms of what they're talking about. It's not just a matter of the form. It's what the game is actually concerned with saying, as we'll see as we go on. But we've already seen that. So much of this is understanding Merity, and that's what this consists in. Why come? Monfonyo, Bisen Rayo, Kulu. Contoyo, Monsin, Nili, Fin Conmoyo, Bonten, Ronfoyo, Sin Polili, Con Rudu, Koyo, Mili? He's lost. It's an ancient language. Even Keele can't get it all at once. The eternal optimist. I can do it. This is no different than all the research that I've done. Yeah, go back into the book, Keele. That'll help you. That is a great thing to point out, Grail. As we will see, and this is a great representation of Keele already, he is very quick to lose himself in books and default to his research, but it is a little bit subtler and really important that even after 10 years, even after not recognizing his friends right away, he's willing to help them. Now, here's an interesting follow-up question. Why is he doing that? Does he think it's the right thing to do? Does he think that Merity is intellectually interesting as a research subject? Does he recognize that he owes something to his old friends? We don't know enough about Keele yet to answer that question, but we'll see as we get to know him that that's a really important one to answer and to track as we see his progression through the story. Fono sin pin rololilon. Oh, a diagram. I got so excited when I saw this diagram for the first time, you guys. Mofo linsono. Mokodo tintu. Yes, that's right. On the bottom is Inferia, and on the top is Celestia. In the middle is the Orbis barrier. Remember, many of our conversations in the Tales of games have ended up in funny ways centering on cartography. Totally fits with that we're right away getting access to the world through a pictorial representation. Hold that thought and look at this beautiful map and description, because it sounds like Evie might be destroying my apartment, so I want to make sure that everything's okay for half a second. Yes, the jump scare of explaining the world. How about that? Are you destroying my apartment? What are you up to? What are you going after? What? What? Is your bone there? Is that what you're about? Yeah, okay. Listen, you can't put that under something, okay? Keep it up there. Hey, keep it up there, please, okay? If you're gonna play with it, do it on the couch, please. Okay. Try to be calm, okay? Try to be calm. All right, he's back. Ah, why did the stream leave? Oh, don't tell me my streaming setup is failing me. That's so annoying because I didn't trip over cables or anything. It's still on. Oh, no, that's a lie. I did trip over something. That's on me. But where did it go? I will explain two things. First, one of my daughter's favorite games, if it hasn't come up before, is called Reverse Fetch, which is exactly what it sounds like. She takes her favorite toy and she puts it somewhere that is out of reach of herself, like she'll push it under the couch, and then she'll yell at the person she's playing with to get it for her. That's her favorite thing in the world to do. So her favorite bone she had stowed away under the couch, and she was yelling at me to get it for her. So it's anyone's guess whether she'll be satisfied. She usually wants to play it for hours when she gets it in her little but powerful head. And the second thing is, if you have not streamed, there is a delightfully slightly different AV setup that is required for any console you might want to use, especially of different generations. Nowadays it's more standardized, but back in PS2 days it was not. So I have to use this little adapter which has its own bonus power cord, which is just slightly more taut than it should be, with slightly looser connectors than it ought to have. So I popped that when I stood up. So anyway, probably more explanation than you wanted. Let's go back to explaining the more important things. The world. It's a great world. It's a world that I would say, like any Tales of Worlds, but especially something like the worlds in the esoteric games, is rife with symbolic content. So as much as they're going to throw a few things at it, try to keep up as much as we can. And again, remember, it's a JRPG, so a lot of it will track better as we go out and see the world. And remember, that was something we were already thinking about as a theme last time, the difference between reasoning about the nature of things from the armchair, as the academics do, and actually going out and gathering data about it, as a JRPG party does. That's right. On the bottom is Inferia, and on the top is Celestia. In the middle is the Orbis Barrier. All of this, collectively, is called Eternia. This is the world we live in. Inferia. Celestia. Boom! Oh, that seems bad. An explosion? No way. Isn't it cool how much can be accomplished just by cutting the music? Inferia. Celestia. Boom! Hey, Keele, explain for us. Come over here. Evie is back on her perch, so I think she's satisfied for the moment. Look through here. What does this have to do with anything? Just look. Can you see the Orbis Barrier? And it's slight, but if you notice the little, like the curved arc on the left side of your screen, it's the Orbis Barrier. It wraps around if you squint through the clouds. Yeah. So, and notice there's a little dot in the middle. You saw it more clearly in the animation of the Orbis Barrier when there was the big explosion within it on Wednesday, but we're seeing that too. I'll enlarge it. Wait. Now you can see more clearly. What's this? The dark matter. It seems to be growing bigger by the day. All right, a new term. So we have Kramels, who are these incorporeal, spiritual, living things that may or may not have intelligence. And now within the Orbis Barrier, we have something called dark matter. And it seems to be growing bigger by the day, which is probably not great. And that must be why the color of the sky is different. So, what's that dark matter? A sign of world destruction. Yeah, so probably not a good thing. Yeah, so interesting, Grail. I think at a minimum, it would be a really challenging world because you're always comparing yourself with something that is out of reach, this whole universe that is looming above you. But interesting that you would go in that direction with it, with your commentary, because remember, what seems to be the case from what we learned on Wednesday is that on the whole, Inferians seem to think of the Celestians as just this awful, monstrous race from this terrible, inhospitable place. So almost the opposite of what you were saying. But either way, yes, to have something out of reach and really out of your direct apprehension or capacity to understand, yet always right in front of you, that would probably be a challenging way to live. But it's interesting. It raises the question. I mean, being so connected but also distant from so many parts of the world today with the advent of the internet, like how different is our world from that? I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. It's possible that Merity is here to warn us of the danger. We should look into this further. Look into it? How? We've got to go see Professor Mizet. I think it's Mizet. Not to be confused with Muse. She's not here, as far as we know. He's an authority on the Melnix language. He left Minchi University, and he's currently living in Morley Village. No, not Muse. That's got to count as a down bad chat. You're kidding, right? Morley is on a whole different continent. This is getting ridiculous. I'm going with Keele. I can't just ignore Merity. Read. Fonyo liko. Bonsonyo chun. We're leaving. Are you ready? Keele, you're not much of a traveler. Are you sure you're going to be okay? That was when I was a little kid. I'm fine now, he said convincingly. We'll see. Well, let's go. This is going to be one long trip. Oh, buddy. I've got bad news for you. You're trapped in 3 discs worth of trip. Don't worry. It'll work out somehow. No problem. Farah, I love you. Farah, to get to Morley, you have to go through the Nostos Cave, located to the east of here. We head east. I don't know about this. Further and further away from home we go. Oh, and we have Farah now. Yes, I'm excited. Oh, and because I have figured out how to change party members who are represented on the map, it might be worth, because we're going to want to restock anyway, so when we go back to Minchi, why don't we go back to the church too and see if we get different dialogue when someone else is leading. I forgot to do this at the start of the stream, but talking about going further from home, this will probably give you stuff you already know, but it occurred to me to read the back of the box to you because I didn't do that on Wednesday. So similar to other backs of boxes, we have sort of title text introducing things and then text going into more detail. So I'll read you both. So at the top it says, embark on a heroic journey to discover the truth behind an enigmatic stranger and the ominous message she brings. That ominous message we now know being boom! For years, life in the sleepy village of Rasheen's was routine and peaceful. That is, until the day a spacecraft crashed in a nearby forest, leaving nothing but wreckage, a mysterious girl, and a desperate warning of catastrophe. Join Reed, Farah, and other valiant heroes as they set out to discover the origin of the stranded girl and the truth behind the fate of their worlds. And if you want to see how they were advertising the second game ever to be localized in the West, because you have all these different little snapshots of the game and some text highlighting features, this is what they said. They said, beautifully animated sequences, large cast of unique personalities, intriguing subworlds and minigames. So there you go, the minigames made the back of the box. Real-time combat system with combo moves and skills, and hundreds of powerful spells, enchanted weapons, and arcane items. And I'm gonna remind the group, because I'm hyping up Queeky so much, he makes the back of the box. He is a central figure there. along with shots of the other characters. So there you go. Already we are journeying far from home in pursuit of the truth and what to do about this catastrophe. Yeah, an interesting structure of the call to adventure, right? Because, like we talked about a little on Wednesday, it had nothing directly in any obvious way to do with Farah or Reed. They had some burden of guilt for something that they had been held responsible for in the village a while ago. The Elder made that clear, but we don't know what that was. But really, the Elder was only afraid of and xenophobic towards Meredy and said she must be cast out. And it was the combination of Farah's kindness and altruism wanting to help Meredy, and then Meredy's insistence that there was something seemingly special about Reed that led the two of them to become bound up in Meredy's journey. So even though Reed and Farah seem to be the central figures, Meredy so far, really, from the beginning of the game, the introductory sequence seems to be the impetus for a lot of what's happening. Yeah, let's keep an eye on who's running the show and who's coming along and for why as we go. Because you might remember from some of our other discussions and what I've published on things like Tales of Eternia, thinking about what reasons keep the group together and why they continue to decide to go along or to part ways at different points in their journey. That's a really interesting way into thinking about what a particular Tales of game is trying to tell you and how their characters relate to each other in their quest. Alright, so first thing we do, obviously, is go back because we didn't have a chance to explore the observatory. What is this? It sure doesn't look like a map of the world. Don't you know anything? This is a map of the heavens. It's Celestia's geographical features as seen through a telescope and mapped out. So it's not a map of our world, it's a map of the other world. I see. I think we can see the map, yeah, in more clarity if we go and look again. The map of Eternia. It sure looks like it. Our world, Inferia, is on the bottom, and Celestia is on the top. And in between the two must be the Orbis Barrier. And this obviously was interesting to me. I don't know. I don't think it's the kind of thing that gets an obvious explanation over the course of the game. But if you look, I mean, there's clearly more being indicated on that map, right? Like there's, can I point to it? Am I good enough to point? Like on the right-hand side of the map, there are those stratified circles that seem, based on what the diagram is indicating, to be saying something about the Orbis Barrier and its different layers. But it's implicit content. It doesn't really tell you what it is that it's indicating through that, and you obviously can't zoom in and get better clarity into the map. But it might be interesting, because I know I wanted to do this after I played the game, to go through everything and then revisit the map and ask, okay, can we get a better sense of what it is that it was showing us beyond what the characters could tell it was showing us at the start of the stories. No, that's true. Now that Keele is here, it's a real party. He's the leader of the pack, as we will soon see. In between the two must be the Orbis Barrier. Too bad this knowledge does nothing to fill my stomach. If you forgot, Reed's two traits right now are wants to go home and is hungry. Reed, my beloved. My boy. We love Reed, but it's also okay to love to hate Reed. If the Tales of games have not taught you that so far. It's empty. It's empty. It's empty. It's empty? Hey, Keele, what used to be in this box? Holy bottles. Holy bottles? Yeah, I can't get back to Minchi without it. That should tell you a lot about Keele. And even when you used Holy Bottle, didn't you still get attacked occasionally? Well, if that happens, all you have to do is run for your life. Yes, Keele is going to make for an interesting traveling companion. Can we look through the scope again? No, we can't. Found Holy Bottle. Ah, there was one left. Not a dark bottle, but Keele's not the kind of fella who would keep that around. Usually I'm not either, but strange times. Orbis Barrier Research Log. Oh, but we don't actually get to read the research. How about on the bookshelf? Globule Physics. So there's that word again. Keele and maybe some of his cohort were bandying that about, but we haven't had a definition yet. has to do with physics. An irregular buildup of cremal pressure caused by the accumulation of caloric flow over a long period of time is called globule distortion. So that's a lot, but again, remember, we have the building blocks to understand a lot of that because we know the cramels are these little, like, point-sized spirits with no extension. And so presumably if there are a lot of them exerting themselves in a certain direction in an unnatural way, you could have a buildup of pressure, which causes this sort of imbalance of energy, because we already heard that term caloric flow in reference to light cramels, probably some measure of the energy or transmission of energy that's going on with them. And so when that persists over a long period of time, we get something called globule distortion. Again, that has not yet told us what globules are, but we can make sense of what it is that the phenomenon consists in. That's all we got here. All right. It has to do with physics. We're learning about the physics of the world. We have not yet gone on to metaphysics, but it's a JRPG, so chances are good that's in the offing. You found a lens. You now have one. I am now legally obligated to tell you, if you have not read my work and don't know this, that Tales of Destiny centers on the technology of lens, this foreign material which came from a comet and begets monsters. That is not to say, I think, that that same history happened in Eternia, but as you will see, we've already seen some Tales of Destiny cameos. There are more. One aspect of those cameos is that there are lenses, which you can find in the world and later give to a certain someone. I think that's all we got to do here. Again, as I was alluding to before we started the stream, think about the difference between theory and observation, and notice how we just did both successively. We started in Minchi, the town of the academics, and we read all of their research in the library, totally sequestered from the world. And then the next thing we do is go and find Keele and actually take measurements and observe what the world looks like and what it is that Merity is talking about through a telescope. That idea of not just doing theory in the abstract and not just wandering through the world, but rather trying to square theory with our experience and have the two talk with each other, I think is a big part of what Tales of Eternia is up to. I think I just saved, but I'm going to do it again because I'm anxious. ABS, as Aaron was saying on Wednesday, always be saving. Yep, I think that's a great point to make, Grail, and that's one of those things where I wish I knew more about astronomy, because I feel like a gifted astronomer could probably infer how far apart they are based on what we've seen of them in the games, and then see how possible or impossible it would be to get a relatively reasonable mapping of the other one, and under what conditions of spin that would be possible. But one minimal thing that we can point out, even based on what the academics in Minchi were saying, is that, like they were saying about the best models that they have and the information in the library, just because they have a model and a globe of Celestia, it does not follow that that model is accurate, right? They might have done their best to map what they can, and there might be a lot of holes or gaps. There might be just one side filled in because they can only see one side, right? It's really interesting to me that we as players see Keele talk about this model, and we can see the model there, we see the globe, but we don't see it at anywhere near sufficient resolution to actually tell what's there. So yeah, perfectly in line with what the game seems to be telling us in other places so far. Farah plays super well, by the way. This is my first time playing as her, but man, yeah, I'm immediately recognizing what you were saying, Grail, about her being the prototype for really all hand-to-hand combat fighters later in the series. She's so fast, she combos really well. I know I'm going to get distracted and fail at healing, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Is there something over there that I missed to collect? No, I think there were chests there, but we got them.
Wait.
What? Out of breath? As weak as ever.
Give me a break. I've had insufficient sleep lately.
If that ain't a mood, I don't know what is.
Why don't we camp here? We still have a long ways to go.
I think you tuned in do.
Don't touch me!
Keele, you don't need to speak like that.
You can't be too careful around people you don't know. But she could be useful. At the very least, I hope to build a solid bridge of communication.
Now remember what I was saying about I wonder why it is he's helping Merity, and listen to the language he's using to talk about her. She could be useful.
Useful?
Reed also noticed.
Once I gather enough evidence about the dangers of the dark matter, I can return to Minch University. Better yet, I might even be invited to join the Royal Observatory of Astronomy.
So the only reason why you're so cooperative is for your own benefit. You become quite the opportunist.
Reed, pretty incisive already for someone who thought he could eat a stuffed bird in the last stream. Something else interesting and maybe worth pointing out, a game that started with this very explicit case of casting out has also introduced us to Keele, the academic who has been cast out of his university because he has this unorthodox theory about the dangers of dark matter.
You're wrong. I'm simply searching for the truth, and for that I need the best environment possible.
Usu wadi tun ruwaigun?
You're right, Grail. Yep. But notice, for all that we've learned about the physics of the world, we can't really say one way or another exactly the mechanics of how they orbit each other or what it is that they see or don't see yet.
Don't touch me!
Is that a Kramo cage? You have one too?
Don't be stupid. I'm not like those rogue Kramel students. Unlike them, I've actually studied the light Kramels. Globule distortion and caloric flow fundamentals suggest a practical scientific application.
Remember, we know what globule distortion is. It's an imbalance of pressures caused by a buildup of caloric flow, which seems to be a measure of energy when Kramels move from one place to another.
For instance...
I got it. You're something else.
No problem?
Farah doesn't seem sure. That's never a good sign. No, Farah, you're a canary in this proverbial coal mine. No! Stop, Grail. Resist that urge. Don't keep it out of your mind. These are the important questions to ask, especially in a game like this. It is very interesting that there is a day and night cycle in a world, in a universe, which seems to be described by these two planets and this membrane between them, and yet which doesn't seem to leave obvious room for anything outside of that system. That is something you should keep absolutely in your mind and think about as we learn more about the world. Because I'll remind you, and I'll hint to everyone else, we are far from learning everything about this universe in which we've been dropped. Yeah, but here's my problem. I don't think I have anything to give her TP, so we're kind of, gonna have to make do with what we have for now. That's okay. I'll lay off her skills in the next couple battles. I think we'll be okay making it back to town. And we'll save up first, just so we're at minimal risk for losing stuff. So I'll also point out, leaning into this distinction between what might rightly be called the distinction between theory and praxis, right? Where praxis is the actual activity and action and how we enact ourselves within the world, whereas theory is this distanced intellectual pursuit and more abstracted away from the particulars of being. Keele, the academic who's all about theory, seems to have this aversion to touch, which we might easily extrapolate into this lack of capacity to actually go out into the world and understand things hands-on. He feels safer trying to understand and control the system from a distance, from a point of isolation and safety from it. So we want to go to Nostos Cave, but first, for all the reasons we talked about, we're going to make a pit stop in Minchi.
Let's do it. Go.
Not a pincer.
Go. Ha. Go. Go. Ha. Go. Ha.
Lightning
Go.
blade.
Is that it?
The gang is simply too powerful. That will not always be the case, so we have to enjoy it while it is. Also, as we stray further from home, I will let people know if they don't know this, that Nostos, remember we're going to Nostos Cave next, is Greek for homecoming. So, for instance, if you ever read something like Homer's The Odyssey, the idea of Nostos really, like, narratively, in the Western canon originates from there, because it's Odysseus's journey home, returning whence he came, following the events of the Trojan War. Okay, I think I want to prioritize recovery items followed by equipment. I think that makes sense. Oh, but first I want to go to the church and see if we can get different dialogue with Farah and other leaders. Yeah, I know just from reading into it a little bit and watching people play it. I think a lot of combo systems in Eternia, if not all of them, are like this, but Farah's especially, like when you get all of the pieces of it to go off, it really goes off in a fun way. I think this is the church, right? Yeah, this is the church. Yeah, so as I play around with her, I'll see if I can get any of that going on, which also invites us to invest in orange gels early on. Oh, no, did you see? I think it just switched to read. Yeah, so nope. It's interesting because they had all of the tools for it in terms of changing characters and having these personal interactions, but it's not quite developed to that extent yet. Or you might read it as saying there's an important sense here in which Reed is the leader even when others are taking charge, raising the question, why might that be, especially when he seems to be the least willing to go on this journey? It's not an idle question, by the way. I think that's an important thing to be thinking about as we go further into the game. Oh, they absolutely did. No, you know how NPCs work. They figure out exactly where you're trying to go and then just happen to be standing there. I think we can get items here, right? Yeah, they sell all kinds of things at the student store. That's half our gold. Okay, I'm going to try to evenly distribute things more or less. I want 5 life bottles. I get 2 ribbons. And especially while we have no other equipment, there's no reason not to get capes. Good. Oh, beautiful safety. I never use capes, but they really do help give you just that little extra bit of security, especially early on. Did I get one too many? No, I just didn't equip one in Rarity. Okay, perfect. And we still have a modest amount of gold left. Okay. I'm gonna stop by the academy really quickly because I half remember there might be some dialogue for Keele nowadays with us. So we don't have to belabor the point here, but I just want to see if he has any conversations. These are just all the books we already read. Isn't this such a nice relaxing town track too? Please be quiet. Maybe down here. The majesty and virtue of Inferia, as seen in the legend of Altus Ve. Doesn't mean anything to you yet, but hold on to that name, Altus Ve. You might see it again at some point. That was good. We missed that on the chalkboard last time. Keele's lab. Was I want to say on the second floor? Is that right? Yeah, I think this is the light Kramer lab. Oh no, this is the wind Kramer lab. But look, we can see new details here now, so this also makes it worth it. So 1, makes flowers sway. 2, raises a cloud of dust. 3, makes one stagger. 4, turns umbrellas inside out. Look, if you were learning about wind for the first time, all science starts with observations, right? Wind Kramels don't simply blow wind. They also carry the seeds of plants, control atmospheric temperatures, and perform many other things helpful to us. Wind Kramels behave capriciously and erratically, much like unruly children. I mentioned before that this game is the prototype for a lot of things that you see in later Tales of games, and I think study of the elements is a huge entry on that list. And one of the things that I quite like, and why I'm spending some more time dwelling in the labs here, is that I do think you get a certain sense of just holistic study and appreciation for all the things that the elements are capable of. It doesn't really come back in quite the same way in later games. Yeah, speaking of references and speaking of other games, if evil exists in the world, Kramels are at the heart of mankind. Now notice, that's not just a campy allusion to the Edward D. Morrison line, which kicks off Tales of Fantasia and therefore the series. And that line, which started it all, was, if there is evil in this world, it lurks in the hearts of men. It actually says something substantive about the relationship between Kramels and mankind and morality. And remember, I think it was probably not coincidentally in this lab where when we walked in last time, the researchers were debating the theosophical implications of Kramels, asking, well, do they exist to serve men? Like, do men exist because Kramels allow it? Like, what does that imply about the nature of the world and why bad things happen? So this is pretty directly pointing out, like, at least according to this strain of research, it's not just that organic life seems to be possible because of water Kramels, but also to the extent that there is morality in the world, Kramels are at the source of it because Kramels are at the source of life. Already we're thinking about this scientific inquiry that points to the foundations of the world, which also points back to ourselves as the individuals who are constituted by Kramels and animated by them. Got a lens. The professors are all talk. When it comes down to it, they don't know any more than we do. We are very smart. We should be the researchers, not the research assistants. Young people today are too eager to jump to conclusions. The world just isn't that simple. It's a complex world, as we will see, as we've already seen. What is the relationship between Kramels and human beings? The more I think about it, the less I understand. I'm sure you're already feeling that. I am too, but hold on to it. We'll have plenty more data as we go further into the game. I did not get the lens and machines. I missed that one. You can remind me if there's ever an opportunity for us to go back there. Oh, and there we go. So good. It tells us outside. It's not obvious from inside that room, but what we get in the library makes it obvious. So that room that is speculating about the religious and moral nature of Kramels and how they inform life is the water Kramel lab. And remember, from the library, we learned that water Kramels are really the distinctive element of living things. Okay, we did the wind lab. Are there more labs on the other floor? I think this is where it goes to the exam room. Yeah, this is the exam room with our dear Chelsea. And this lab prep is in progress. Oh, that's the intermediate exam room. Yeah, there are 3 levels, not 2. Forgot that. So the other labs are on the first floor. This one's the light one, which is Keele's. So I'm going to start in this one, which is the fire one, which exploded the first time we went in. But now we should be able to investigate it. 50, blistering. 100, minor burns. 200, severe burns. 500, to be tested. I'm guessing it's hard to get a subject for that one. Ow! Reed just touching things. Well, I guess I'm asking him to touch things, so I'm partly responsible. It's my bad, Reed. The youngsters today have no guts. They can't even tolerate a little heat. We talked when we were playing the first Tales of Xillia about how interesting it was that to pick up side quests, they always asked you to go back to the area you just visited. Almost always, at least. And I think it's interesting in this game, which again seems to be so much about scientific observation, that you also can learn so much more about an area just by going back to it and revisiting it. Like, none of this was accessible to us the first time, but now, with Keele the scientist in tow, we get access to different things. Trial 1, temperature, 70, cranial pressure, 0.12. Trial 2, temperature, 66, cranial pressure, 0.10. Trial 3, temperature, 72, cranial pressure, 0.25. Trial 4, temperature, 70, cranial pressure, 0.09. Got it. So it seems like they're just... I don't think one is causing a relationship with another. I think those are just 2 variables that they're fixing for their trials. And remember, from what we learned a little more opaquely in the observatory with the globule distortion and Keele talking about his work, we still don't really know what's up with light cranials. It seems like maybe they have a different nature than the other elements, and that the people who research them are similarly kind of ostracized. But it seems like they have this particular function of exerting pressure and causing these distortions that can have perhaps a special utility in science or understanding the world or something to that effect. Ah, Keele, you've returned. Did you realize your error? I'll prove to you that I am right. I'll find the truth, but not cooped up in this hopeless laboratory, excuse me. Slip of the tongue. Same as always. You're quite the talker. So, notice, this will be interesting as we go out into the world and get to know more about Keele. When we bring him back to Minchi, he stands up to his professor by saying, I'm going to get answers, but not cooped up in academia. I'm going to go out into the world and find them. So he's talking the talk in terms of wanting to go out and do research in the field. Let's see if that holds up. Keele, you're back. His friend Zank. No, I just came for a visit. Do you have any intentions of returning to the university? I only wish to discover the truth. And if I stay here at the university, I'll never find it. I understand. I know you won't bend for anyone once you set your mind. We're going to hear complaints once again about how the light cranial department just wastes money. It's the ostracization that I was talking about. Ostracization, excuse me. Ostracizement? No, I think ostracization. Now all our measurements are ruined. I have no idea why it exploded. Okay, I think that's it. And our 2 little academic lovebirds, I think they're off on their journey to the conference, but I'll just check. Yeah, they're gone. So we'll try to see if we can catch up with them along the way. All right, good to go. Let's rock. To Nostos Cave. A homecoming away from home. Right after we save up. So Keele also has a cage, but Not for anything so barbaric as simply mindlessly using it. He takes himself to be importantly different because he understands the theory behind it.
Let's do it. Ha, ha, ah, ah,
Oh my god.
ha. Bomb strike. Ah,
Aqua Edge!
to, ha,
Lightning Blade!
ha, ah,
Aqua Edge! Win!
Double up and thrust up. Alright, pushing forward. Pushing forward. Keele is also great in battle, by the way, as we will see. I think he might be one of my favorite mages. Nostos Cave. I'm going to save one more time. Wow, those eggs look good. Okay. I'm going to intentionally hold my tongue through a lot of the following sequence, which is to say this entire next leg of the journey, this dungeon. But what I'm going to tell you now is I'm going to ask you as much as you're able, whether you're watching things now or if you're watching the VOD later. And by the way, I'm going to get back into the habit of posting the VODs on YouTube again, so look for that this weekend. But what I'm going to ask you is pay as much attention as you can muster to all of the details of this dungeon. And do your best to go back and think about them as you go, and don't forget about them. That's all I'm going to say about it. Wow, those eggs look good. I won't sell these even for 10,000 gold. Yes, even that. They came at the cost of my partner's life. And yeah, I think you're right, Gray. I'll try to work on actually pulling off some of those combos as we go. What kind of eggs are those? Egg bears. Egg bear eggs fetch a high price as miracle cures. I got them from the mountain, but we were spotted by the egg bear parents. You weren't very lucky. But my merchant spirit won't die here. For my partner, I will earn, and earn some more. Are you interested in anything besides egg bear eggs? Oh, I said I was interested in dark bottles. I am actually going to get a couple of those. And maybe one more orange gel. Do you want to buy anything besides egg bear eggs? That's all we've got. We'll meet again, I'm sure. So he got Miracle Cure egg bear eggs, which are valued for that reason, but they came at the price of his partner's life because they were attacked by the parents. It seems that the tidal movement here is affected by time. Yes, it is. Even the quiet tracks, even the tracks you don't go back to a lot, there's a really nice sense of just range and holistic approach to musical storytelling in this game.
Demon Hammer!
Alright, so let's see. Does Farah have skills that can knock up and knock back down yet? Not that. Rise into air. I think that should be able to take enemies with us, right? So that's in the right place. I just need to remember to start with that after basic attack. I don't think we have anything that can knock them back down yet. But let's see if Swallowed Dance can at least knock them up. That would be a good step. And then see if we can chain other things to it. Okay, I should be able to manage trying that. Oh, I thought this was one of the games where you could use healing skills in the menu. I might be misremembering. Well, we're okay. I'm just being a little anal about it.
Hey, Keele. Are you okay? Should we camp?
No, I'll be fine.
We've grown and learned to say complicated stuff. But when you get right down to it, we never really change, do we?
I love that line. And yes, I love Farah. And you're right, Grail. That's right on the money. Can't believe it's taken me this long.
Nothing at all.
And as we get much further into this game, we can come back to why this experience not only is very cool for me, but is also perfectly germane to Tales of Eternia. Like, this is the perfect game for that to be happening in. But it's going to take a while to get there. We'll get to that. Flashback.
I'll fight you. It's all right now, Keele.
I don't think they tell you, but it's worth noting that was also an egg bear that was chasing them.
I said it's all right. Well, at least it looks like he doesn't cry anymore. Keele, are you all right?
Of course.
But his adolescent charm sure is gone.
Reed, the best friend ever. So notice, I mentioned that it's worth keeping Tales of Grace's F in mind as you go through this. We just saw a flashback to childhood, and we're looking at three friends who have known each other since childhood, but we've started in what is, in effect, the adulthood of their adolescence, and are looking back through flashback structure. Don't worry, Grail, I can defend the acting, and I will. All throughout this playthrough. I also think it is really interesting that they did not bring in child actors or different actors for those childhood sequences. They kept with the same voices that we get in adulthood. And remember, Pottery and I talked a little bit about this on Wednesday, but there are really interesting things that can invite you to think about. For instance, we are not just going back in time and engaging with that previous timeline as if we had direct access to it. Those memories are being mediated by adult versions of those people. So isn't it interesting that those kids are kind of unbelievably voiced by older versions of themselves, even in the memories? What might that be saying about how that representation and the original activity that's being represented in memories is mediated between the characters and their past and us as the players? You are correct, Grail. That is a really great thing to point out. I had forgotten that. You're absolutely right. Better armor for Reed. Love that.
Let's do it.
Okay, can I knock you into the earth, me? Kind of. I want them to stay airborne. I wonder how easy that'll be to make happen, but that does get them off the ground, so maybe that's something to work with. Chain arms. Buckler. It's not the worst thing if we take the most direct route through this cave, but I think I accidentally took us around a lot of items and stuff. Might be worth going back.
Let's do it.
I'm just conscious that, like Keele pointed out, the tides change.
Swallow dance.
I don't want to make it a pain for us to get back here either.
We're not gonna lose so easily.
Oh, enemies that give us orange gels. Excellent. Actually, we're okay on TP right now. Does Keele just not have skills yet? No, he does. He's just being really conservative, I guess. That's the Keele I know. Because I think this is the way out. Yeah. Ah, an egg bear! Montoyo! Leave it to me. An egg bear should be an easy kill. Also point out to you that while both of the previous sequences in this cave have been voiced, this one is not voiced. Also note that I have been put back in control of Reed. And half of our party is nowhere to be found.
Sonic Blade. All right.
An easy fight. Then why do you look so tired? Why don't we camp here? Yeah, I'm starved.
What are you doing?
Huh? I'm making jerky. If you dry egg bear meat, it makes good emergency rations.
I'm afraid I can't agree. Over time, egg bear meat undergoes a chemical transformation and loses much of its nutrients.
What are you talking about, Keele? You've never even eaten it.
No, it doesn't look much like a bear grail, does it? Interesting.
I don't need to eat it to know. It's explained in detail in Volume 3, Chapter 21 of the Leonoa Encyclopedia.
Huh. I don't care what it says. I eat it all the time, and I know I'm right.
Theory versus praxis
Boys,
again.
Calm down. Doesn't matter either way.
Keele, don't even think I'm sharing this with you.
Fine, I could care less.
Boys will be boys.
Don't forget this experience we've had together in this cave.
Let's do it. Ha. Ha, ha, ha.
Aqua Egg! Demon Hammer!
Wind Blade! We won!
Giving me more reasons to play Star Ocean Grail. It's on the list. It's on the list. Is Battle Axe better for Reed? Let's see. It's selectively better, but especially while he's not in my control, I feel better about having him balanced. It looks like an egg bear family. The parents must have got them after they stole the eggs. The kids and one parent. And we fought an egg bear just a little while ago, remember? And the merchant's friend. It's now high tide. Those look like remaining broken eggs, although Reed didn't recognize them as such. Found orange gel.
Let's do it. Go. Swallow dance. Triple blossom. Sonic fist.
Fireball!
Go. Go. Swallow dance. Ah!
Fireball!
We won!
Maybe the home of some kind of creature? Nothing appears to be here. except for a lens.
Let's do it. Go. Bomb strike.
Aqua Edge! You can't beat me.
I was trying to practice using Ferris healing as Grail suggested, but oh, I accidentally took it off the shortcut. That's why it wasn't working. There, now we can practice it. Yep, it's a very Keele style call out Grail. I think that says a lot about his self-assuredness at this point in the journey. Especially because, as we know, it is the most basic kind of magic in the series. And yet he is so confident in his capacity to use it. Good. It does give me a good feel for how long it takes to cast and junk like that.
Swallow dance. Is that it?
Yeah, right now it's a little hard for me to get her skills to chain the way I want them to, but my guess is that will become easier as we get more skills under Farrah's belt. And I am going to try to make an effort to play around with Meredy and Keele at some point too. Half of me wants to go back and try to 100% the cave, but the other half thinks we'll probably have opportunity to come back here later, so I'd rather advance things for now. It's a good question, Grail. And I don't think it's a totally idle question. We should keep that in mind in terms of the relationships between sprites and what we fight in battles.
Swallow dance.
It's interesting too because this was really the... Okay, this is when I am responsible for healing, so actually put a pin in that conversation. I need to make sure we don't die right away, because I don't think we've healed yet.
Aqua Edge!
Oh, god damn it. Come on, come on. Oh, god damn it. I hope that doesn't set us back too far. Where does that punt us to? Oh, this is perfect. I thought it was going to push us back further. I forgot it was so forgiving with that. And now we can just camp before we press on. And there's a ship. Look at that. On the high seas. What I was going to say was this was the last game, at least that we got in the West. I forget. I don't know how the director's cut of Destiny that they did before Symphonia was about this, but this one kind of splits random encounters that don't have sprites on the map with encounters that do have sprites on the map, like we've already seen. And then with Tales of Symphonia, they went to sprites on the map all the time. But remember in Symphonia, in the field, they also have these unique, like, amorphous monster sprites that don't correspond to any monster, but just kind of look like black blobs. So I think they were definitely actively thinking about ways to represent monsters on the map. And this is a game that we've already seen has some explicit ideas about monsters in it, in terms of what they are and how they relate to the world. So, yeah, worth keeping an eye on.
Triple blossom. Sonic fist.
I think Triple Blossom might be Farrah's lightning blade.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, put a pin in that, Grail, because as you know and as others will see, I think there's a lot of special reason behind why Farrah and Keele have only magic. I get that, especially early on, it can be frustrating from a gameplay perspective, but I think part of the magic of Eternia is that they are that way. yeah, Symphonia definitely is a special character to its overworld. What is it that you were asking if you should talk about Grail? Was that in reference to the Director's Cut of Destiny? Or something else? Okay, and I will use an orange gel because we stocked up on those. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, no, I'm interested in how it handled it. I think that's okay, spoiler-wise. Thank you for asking, you dear sweetheart. And I hope you know I didn't actually get mad at you the other day in the Discord either. I was just giving you grief. But yeah, I'm curious. Especially since like I said on Wednesday, I feel like in a lot of ways it was veering towards Symphonia more so than what was going on in Eternia. So, yeah, I'm curious.
We don't lose.
No, we don't, Farah. Except that one time, but we're not going to talk about that. We retried, so it doesn't count as a loss. And one more save before we get to the next area. Now I think I'm going to start using those dark bottles the next time we get to enemies, because of no reason. It's good, so I think we're on track to get to my second story checkpoint that I was thinking of. I don't know if we'll get to the third, but definitely the second. This is Morley Village. I think it's Morley and not Moral, but I'm sure they'll voice it at some point. It's rare to see visitors here these days. Another great track and beautifully illustrated area, if you hadn't noticed. Oh, interesting. So in that way, the director's cut was calling back more to Eternia than Forge of Symphonia. Man, that's not what I expected. But I guess insofar as it's a director's cut of an earlier game, which was all random encounters, like the original Destiny has no sprites, that feels true to what it was that it was reimagining. Oh, you're just... I shouldn't have said you could tell me, because now you're just... I mean, it's good that... I appreciate you telling me, but it's just getting me more excited to want to play the director's cut. I should have expected that to be the case. That shop sells items. Thank you. Bystander in the forest, full of wisdom. Would you like some advice on fighting techniques? Always. Sacred skills are learned by combining special skills. To acquire sacred skills, you must raise your slash and thrust levels, if that applies to you. You must also use the special skills that becomes the basis for the sacred skills over and over. So this is what I was telling you, and in the language of later games, it's basically arcane arts. I think maybe some of the other ones have different names for it too. Like I think Symphonia might use a different name, but basically the skills that are a level stronger and which combine other skills and which crucially it's very easy to chain with skills of the lower types. So for building combos, they're really important, especially in Eternia. Welcome, travelers. Anything you need for your journey is right here. No, I know you have a not so hidden agenda to pull and tempt me through the entirety of the series, and you know I'm here for it, so be my bad influence any day, man. Okay, I'm gonna get a couple more dark bottles. I should be using spectacles. I wish I had thought to do that from the beginning of the game, just to assess all the enemies. So I always have a thought, oh, it'd be nice to do that, but I can never bother myself. I want Panacea bottles, yes I do. And I think that's good. You have nothing to fear if you're prepared. Oh, but you know what else I'll do? Because I think there might be an equipment shop coming up. I'm going to sell some of the stuff we're not using anymore for kit. I don't think that's actually better in terms of on balance for Reed, so I'm going to sell that too. Yeah, and see how convenient. They also list all of the equipment at the top because it is the kind of stuff that is guilt-free to sell. Good. How much did that net us? I didn't even see. Good. About 1,500 gold. I'll get there. Listen, I play Innocents Are, you finish my article, and then we'll have a lot to talk about and we can both go in peace. How about that? That's the trade-off. This is the best inn in the village. The store in the rear is our finest grocery. Of course, they're the only inn and grocery in the village. It sure is, buddy. Mutually dying sure is crazy. There aren't any clocks in this village. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. The backwoods of the village are dangerous. Please don't go anywhere near there. So I gotta remind myself to talk to all the NPCs twice because I was getting out of the habit since it didn't seem like they were saying more things, but a lot of them do have further dialogue. Notice, Grail was already picking this out in terms of the day-night sequence, but now the idea that this village doesn't have any clocks and so just goes by the beat of its natural cycle. Time is already looming large in this game. And that is something that I think it is easy to let go of because it's not emphasized in the same way that it is in Tales of Xillia 2. But it does loom large, so I would keep an eye on that. Yeah, but it's kind of a quaint, like tree village town. I could see the appeal. I might not settle down here, but I could live here for a spell. And we always stay at inns. Say it with me. Always stay at inns in the Tales of games. The backwoods are dangerous. Be careful. I'm sure we'll have no reason to go there. Yeah, but if they've been floating there forever, that probably means they've been really well built. And I don't know. I mean, I tend to lean on the side of if a thoughtful architect builds into the natural flow of a forest and trees, I mean, trees are better at staying upright and harmonizing with things than just architecture that we build out of nowhere in the middle of nowhere, right? So I'm almost in the camp of thinking it would be like a safer place to live than a lot of other places. Hey! You took the words right out of my mouth. I didn't even plan it. There's no safer place to live. It hangs high above, and there's only a swamp below. So you also have to think it's a world teeming with monsters, so presumably having some height on them is an advantage. Maybe I'll settle down here. He's with me. Or she's with me? I couldn't tell. That NPC is with me. Oh, don't go near the forest of temptation. That doesn't seem ominous at all. Oh. Ugh. Ugh. Wonder if the forest of temptations is the backwoods, or if it's a different place. That's true. Grail's question earlier reminded me. I think it's the kind of game where there's basically one lens in every place, so now I am kind of becoming a lens hunter in spite of myself. Yeah, but look around. There's not. And it seems like there's a forest of temptation that neatly sequesters all the monsters, so maybe there's an enchantment or something. Who knows? Huh? Aren't you... All right, Simone. Grandpa will buy you anything you want. What? Simone? Wasn't your name Katrine? The academic we met who was on her way to the conference in Inferia City, you might recall. I guess Simone is the name of this man's grandchild? When I asked for directions to Inferia City, he thought I was her. And you've been stuck here ever since? He seemed so happy I couldn't disappoint him. Oh, Katrine. It's the bad outcome of Farah's just boundless kindness. Simone suddenly has some urgent business in Inferia City, but that's Farah's superpower. Despite being boundlessly kind, she loves to lie. Is it all right if she goes? Is that so? Well, I guess Simone's all grown up now and has more important things to do. Take care of yourself, Simone. I will. Thank you for your help. I thought I might end up as Simone forever. I must be on my way now. I wonder if she knows the way from here to Inferia City. I love and empathize so much with Katrine because I think she is the only character I've seen represented in a game whose sense of direction is canonically as bad as mine. So, we're kindred spirits. I try to cook and to make an effort, so having ingredients on hand is the first step. Karimas are the official fruit of Inferia. How about that? I think it's important to know that later. I have that tucked away in my head for some reason. And they also come up, I think, in Tales of Symphonia. I think they're one of the fruits that you use to get through the gorge where the storyteller lives. When you're looking for the mana leaf herb. You know, Grail, I really like that way of putting it. I obviously didn't think about it at the time because I hadn't played Xillia all the way through, but yeah, proactive Leia, which wow makes a lot of difference. I mean, right now at least that's fair. We'll see. There might be reasons to complicate that a little later on. There you are. Just wondering where you were. That was a pretty good hiding spot. Just a pumpkin in a food shop. I am the mysterious Wonder Chef. I'll show you how to make garden salad. That's healthy and low in calories. You learned how to make garden salad. Salad has 3 ingredients: lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumbers. Received garden salad ingredients. Yes, yes, yes. Have a nice day. Wonder Chef, where in your arc did you make the decision to become the muscle-bound goon that you manifest as in Tales of Hearts R? What happened to you along the way, my man? Simone, I couldn't get myself to throw away your old toys. Would you like them back? Ugh, heartbreaking. It's big. It sure is, Reed. And you can eat that. That's just a pumpkin. Oh, that's such a deep cut, Grail. I do remember that now that you say it. But man, that's a deep cut. It's true. Although I don't think Yuri is as bad for that as Katrine or myself are. So now I'll have to be on the hunt for her because I think I lost her questline after this the first time I played. And then realized I failed much later. So I'll have to keep an eye out for where she would logically go next. And see, Grail, that time it was you. It wasn't even Pottery mentioning Tales of Vesperia. How about that? How things change. The people of this village all live off the bounties of the forest. We gather fresh fruits and squeeze them to make delicious juice. This is not like my usual case of a Tales game making me hungry. It's a Tales game that's making me feel guilty like I should be eating healthier food. Are you kidding? Okay, good. We can just clip through the screen. I thought I was going to have to go all the way back and wait for the NPC to move out of my way. The backwoods of Morlaix are below. The backwoods of Morlaix is a dangerous place. You'd best avoid them. No, it was right there. You had to. I agree. A man named Mazet? I'm going to keep saying Mazet until told otherwise. Lives up there. I heard he was a professor in some university a long time ago. This is Professor Mazet's house. Professor Mazet knows all sorts of stuff. Village wise man. From professor to village wise man. A sage, you might say. This is certain to be it. The domicile of Professor Mazet. How long has it been since you've seen this professor of yours? About 3 years. Why does he have to live way out here like this? I'm not certain, but if I know the professor, I'll bet he's got some sort of good reason. That idea of accounting for the reasons on which one's acting is coming up again. It's not the first time. I think that might just be how memory works, man, because I'm that way too, and I feel like a lot of people are. It's like, rare is the person who just has a categorically good or bad memory. It's more like random things stick in the corners of your mind and you don't even know why half the time. All right. this is maybe an obvious thing to point out, and I keep meaning to point it out, but I will now. I don't know the exact etymologies in terms of where the roots come from, but since I'm going to make the point, I might as well actually take a second to look up the etymologies. Show me the etymology. Come on. Oh, is it just from Latin? Okay, so inferia might sound to you like inferior, and I think that's probably where the root comes from. So if you think of inferior, that's usually talking about something being bad, but specifically of a lesser quality than something else, meaning like less than or lower. And in fact, if you look at the etymology of inferior, it comes from Latin inferius, which means lower. So being below something else. Whereas Celestia, I have to imagine, comes from the same root as celestial, which feels like heavenly or above, but I'm wondering how much of it is just a root that means literally just above versus something like the heavens that's more divine. So celestial comes again from another Latin root, celestis. That's how I would say that. Celestial, or maybe caelestius, but from caelum meaning sky. So not necessarily heavenly in terms of some like moral center or domain of the gods, but rather we have heaven and earth just in terms of one being above and one being below. So as we think about the world, and especially about how the world of Inferia casts the other world, saying, oh, it's a bunch of savages and nothing good comes from it. Remember, even though the names might make one sound better than one another, it's really just in terms of how they are relationally posed to one another in space. So, onward. See if we can learn even more about this world. Professor Mazet! Why, if it isn't Keele! How have you been? I've come with a favor to ask of you. Calm down now. You haven't changed at all, Keele. Whenever you discovered something new, you could never contain your excitement. He knows you pretty well. Leave it to the professor. I apologize for my rudeness. Have you been well? That's quite all right. So tell me what brings you here. Thank you. Well, the reason why... Banano, puño, polodito, señor Piroren. I see. So she says she's a Celestian? Of course, I don't believe everything she says. But I would like your advice on how we may be able to communicate with her. I would like all of you to have one of these. They're pretty. It is called an oar's earring. Remember, this is one of the technologies from the ancient Melnick-speaking civilization, which was mentioned in the library, which used to be used as certain ways of marshalling Kramels, and the means of developing them have been lost to time so far as we know. Oar's earring. Have you heard of it? All high-level Kramel mages wear it. They say that putting it on your ears allows you to communicate with Kramels. Communicate with Kramels? Okay, but what does the oar's earring have to do with Merity? Notice already, keep in mind the things that are being suggested about the world later on that are then being convoluted by what we're experiencing in our journey. Again, there's this open question in academia. Yeah, Kramels are living things, but do they have an intellect? Are they capable of representing thought, intending things through their actions, everything that an intelligent being is thought capable of doing? If it ends up being the case that the oar's earring really does enable communication between Kramels and people, that probably implies, or at least adds a lot of weight to the idea that Kramels really are intelligent, because that probably is a precondition for being able to express oneself in a conversation. Okay, but what does the Or's earring have to do with Merity? I get it. Kramels speak the Melnix language too. Correct. The concept might be applicable to this instance as well. But we aren't Kramel mages. Try putting them on, then listen carefully to what Merity says. It sounds easy. Let's try it. Received Or's earring. Okay, I'm ready. Merity, can you understand me? Answer me if you do. Baifu, Nonyon, Pintolo, Rishi. Reed, Keele, did you understand what she said? Not a thing. It's not working at all. Merity, say something again. Tell me if you understand me. Montoli niso monson rontolilo piso montonario. It may take some time. The Or's earring will not work unless you are all on the same psychic wave. Psychic wave? It's a new term. Doesn't sound easy. Oh no, she's going nuts. What's the matter? Calm down. Did you eat something bad? Probably has to do with gastronomy as far as Reed's concerned. Posolo nino kintonayo rotobono no 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 ran. Follow misi pokopayoi. Hey, what do? We can't let her go off by herself. I guess not. I don't understand. What's the matter with her? Keele. Listen, she's human, just like you. Remember, okay? Yes, I understand. Ah, the wisdom of the master. Where could Merity have gone? Oh, absolutely awful, and that's a great thing to underscore, Grail. I mean, it seems comedic, and certainly with that music, I mean, I think the game is telling us it's okay to treat it as a little comedic, but can you imagine, even just knowing what little we know about Merity at this point, having the fate of your world seemingly on your shoulders, going off to a planet where no one is capable of communicating with you, with your one friend who's an animal and is not capable of really communicating in the way that another person could, and just having to rely solely on the faith that someone like Farah has in you, and her good and charitable nature, to have any hope of not only succeeding in your mission, but more basically like relating to people around you in this new community with your ship broken. So it's not even like you can go home. I mean, it's hard to even fathom that. Of course, we're going back before we go forward. Lens, baby. Now we have 4. She's human, just like you. Also, it's cool and speaks to the sage-like nature of the professor that he immediately and firmly insists, this is a human, please treat her that way. In a world where, you know, contrast him with someone like the Elder of Rasheen's, who's like, she's different, I don't understand her, she needs to be cast out right now. Oh, that was a tricky one, Wonder Chef. I am the mysterious Wonder Chef. I'll show you how to make fruit juice, a drink that's chock full of vitamins. You learned how to make fruit juice. Excellent. Fruit juice has 3 ingredients: Karima, strawberries, and lemon. Got those ingredients. Have a nice day. Goodbye, Wonder Chef. I love you. You are my best friend. I don't think we need to sleep in the sage's bed, although I'm sure we could. Yeah, but again, doesn't it say something so interesting about the combination of just background and your disposition? Because, I mean, this teacher, yeah, he lived a certain kind of life, but also here he is in a similar kind of boonies, right? Isolated in a forest. So I think the contrast between them is pretty stark and interesting, because a lot of the circumstances are pretty similar, even if their backgrounds might have been different. So notice, one thing to keep in mind now, we have this technology, the Or's earrings. They take time to work. They depend on you getting on the same psychic wave as someone else before you can understand them, before you can communicate with them. And also, because of what we learned about the Or's earring, we know that that understanding and communication is mediated through Kramels. So the Kramels are kind of the intermediary that passes that understanding and wavelength, so to speak, between the interlocutors. I was racking my brain when we were talking about the other characters, Grail, because I don't know that it says pretty explicitly about any of them. I think with things like the flashback that we got and the reference points of how long it's been, like what we got with Keele and Farah and Reed, and knowing that it's been 10 years since that's how old they were, the game equips us to draw a lot of inferences about how old they are, but I don't know that it ever says explicitly. Oh cool, I didn't think we'd be able to save here. This is great. Good. Now I feel safer going on. And because I feel safer going on, this might be an overcorrection, but I want to try putting on a dark bottle. So I want to try to beef the party up a little bit.
Let's do it.
Not for this, but for something that's coming after this.
Triple blossom.
Mushrooms! Original Dark Souls fans know what's up.
Sonic Blade! Fireball!
Cool.
It looks like we won.
It is great how quickly the characters can dash to separate themselves, because that makes healing a little more feasible. At least in terms of how I'm playing Farah so far.
Let's do it. Go. Swallow dance.
I'm definitely not getting aerial combos yet, but I will say Swallow Dance is a great arc for hitting those annoying enemies in the air, like those bees. Or flies, whatever those flying enemies were.
Sonic fist. Okay.
Now we're back to getting graded on battles. My body was not ready for that. Actually, instead of burning gels, why don't we try to get into the habit of cooking more? How about a sandwich? Nice! That recovered more HP than I thought it would. It's definitely an adjustment, especially from post-Eternia games, Grail, because all the earlier ones work like that, but once you get into it, I think you can make it work to your advantage. Actually, I want to go to that from the equip menu to see how it splits his stats. Oh, perfect. Now give us something like that for Farah. Make my day.
Let's do it. Go. Triple blossom.
Oh, that makes sense. So, and with you saying that about the auto run back, that explains why you were going on and on about manual. That makes sense, yeah.
Victory!
Well, I have gotten so used to playing this on semi that I may stick with it, but if we find our way back to the dojo, I'm happy to play around with that.
Let's do it.
Might make it easier, like taking off the fetters and unleashing my full power. I know, but we seem to be doing okay so far.
Swallow dance.
Yeah, because we were taught about this in the dojo. Like one of the cool things about Eternia is that it has a lot of auto formation commands that you can issue to folks in the party. So it is a big part of it. I'm sure you're right. That's probably what the semi-auto engine is trying to achieve. And it is good. It's useful to be able to like regroup characters or send them in different directions. So maybe as we get a little deeper into this, we can play around with that too. But I'm happy starting with messing around with the different characters. Farah's going down a lot easier than I thought she might. Could everything about Farah be the best? The answer will not surprise you.
Sonic Blade! Wind Blade!
Yeah, I think the hardest thing, especially in the early game when you don't have any of the sacred skills, is the directive to always run back can sometimes interfere with not even comboing, but just getting skills off in quick succession. Because sometimes the auto run back will interrupt you. You've probably even seen that happen with me without realizing that's what was going on. A chirp whistle. It's a weapon. Oh, that's right. Meridy's weapons are whistles. I'd forgotten that. That's why they keep coming up. Listen, it's never too late. I still have to go back and play Mila's run of that. Don't forget. My time with Xillia 1 is far from over. No, there's not. Unless there's some really heroic way of doing it. You can run quite quickly to get out of the way of things, and you can dash through enemies, so I think that's where they give you mobility. I don't think there's a back and front step as such. Let's try cooking again, but something with lower replenishment. Fabulous. Oh, and because we have orange gels, we should use orange gels. Cool. I feel good. I was just asking myself that question in my head. I don't think I've gotten any yet, but we did just get a couple new recipes, so I'll tell you what, I'll check after this battle. Maybe we do and I just don't know it.
Fireball! Fireball! Aqua Edge!
Palm strike! Sonic fist! Sonic fist!
Fireball! Yes!
Job well done. Job well done. How's our level looking? Yeah. We gotta go faster. Gotta get that experience. Oh, yes, perfect. The two things we got in this very village restored TP. I love that. How are we on TP after I restored us? Maybe the lower tier 1. Thank you, Grail. Saving those gels.
Let's do it! Ha! Swallow dance!
Swallow dance is much better for catching the flyers than just punching up.
Aqua Edge!
Swallow dance!
That jump attack is great, though. Keep forgetting about that.
Sonic fist!
It's like a truck when you roll into combos with it. Man, this dark bottle lasts for a while. I'm loving it. Yeah, I know, right? I obviously feel the same way because I'm sure you have already seen me interacting with more systems than what I've done in the last few games we've studied together. But what is that, Grail? Do you have a sense of what that is? Yeah, there's got to be a way to do that with Farah too, because I know the read attack you're talking about, and it does, like, it feels more natural to me. I can't seem to get the rhythm with Farah yet.
Let's do it!
Maybe it's because it relies more on skills of hers that we just don't have yet. I think these caterpillars can do something bad to us status-wise, if I remember correctly. I want to deal with them. Woods worms. Poison, I'm guessing. Okay, they're done now. Evil Needles, those are the flyers. It's a good name. They're annoying, but it's a good name. Here we go.
Let's do it. Go. Swallow dance. Ah. Ha ha ha. Sonic fist. Ah.
Wind blade!
Oh, she doesn't have enough TP to heal. That's annoying. She doesn't have enough TP. I'm just gonna hard heal her. There we go.
Ha ha. Sonic fist. Ah.
Wind blade!
Go. Ha go. Ha ha ha.
Time for a TP meal after this. Got a nice salad
That
going.
should do.
Nothing over here. Can never tell. Sometimes things are hiding right beyond your
Swallow dance.
line of sight.
Ah. Sonic. Ha ha ha. Ah. Swallow dance. Ha go. Swallow dance.
I would buy that, Graham. That sounds right to me.
Go. Ah. Ah.
Oh, God damn it. That's why we bring life bottles. That's why we bring life bottles. It's okay.
Go.
Fireball! Victory!
Oh, I did a lot of cooking in Tales of Hearts R. But that might just be because because some of the special magic of Tales of Hearts R. Yeah, maybe another part of it is I don't know if this is right. Maybe it's just how it feels to me, but I have this sense that the systems are a little more discrete, by which I mean I feel like there are a lot of systems that are very complicated in all of the other games, and part of what makes them complicated is the fact that they all have these really complicated interactions where if you change like one piece of equipment, like it'll change a bunch of abilities, and it also changes like battle performance, and there are just a lot of like cascading relationships. Whereas in a game like Tales of Eternia, there are still a number of systems and some interesting dependencies, some of which we haven't seen yet, but you will see shortly, so take my word for it. But I feel like they're more self-contained, so it doesn't feel like you have to master every system before you can play around with any one of them. Again, I don't know whether that's the fairest way to construe it. Just a half-formed thought I have.
Look, over there.
Merity!
Quickie! Oh,
Not
baru
Quickie.
pun. Yayo di ipu pui mun muti.
There's Quickie. Merity's trying to save Quickie.
Oh yes, the grossest thing in the world. For those who are interested in following along, this is not the skill check that I was alluding to. But he's also not a pushover, so...
She was looking for Quickie.
We've got to save them.
It is nice that they give you a second to get your bearings before running to save them. Oh, that's true. It is kind of just a cousin of, speaking of the Mana Leafer, the same boss you get in that dungeon, isn't it? Alright. I don't think we can save here. Oh, maybe we can. Alright. So I think the way it works if we save here, this is where it's important to remember how those load points function. It's not as if we were to die, it would bring us back to this point. It would bring us back to the last load point, but we wouldn't lose our progress in terms of level and experience and stuff. I think that's how it goes. Also, the mix of this danger track, it's it's like those Get Psyched mix where it's like all rise and the track never resolves. It just like gets more stressful the more you let it go on. All right, let's do this.
Swallow
See if we can deal with all the flies before it gets too crazy.
Swallow dance.
Yeah, I think you're right, Grail, because, I mean, I had that same problem with Jude, remember? Just, yeah, doing the combat and also the healing is not usually how I think about these games. I think you're right on the money there. Not that I don't like playing as other characters, because I will. That was a lot of fun in the Symphonia study that we did to kick this whole thing off. And I think that can give you so many cool new insights into the characters, as was the case for me with characters like Sheena and Regal in Tales of Symphonia. But yeah, having to fight and heal outside of just gel menus takes some multitasking.
Merity, everything's fine now. Merity, I'm sorry. I didn't realize Quickie was gone.
I'll admit it, even having played this before, I also forgot and didn't notice. So, Quickie, my best friend, I am sorry. That's on me, too. I was too distracted by learning about the world and trying to understand you. And isn't that ironic? We thought that she was just going nuts, but in a conversation that was putatively about trying to understand Merity, we didn't understand that she was just trying to go and get her one companion whom she can understand and whom she cares about. But now we have learned something about her and can get to know her better.
Hey, do you understand? Monsters are vicious and dangerous. You put us in danger too. As a part of the group, you don't go off alone like that. Got it?
Come on, that's enough. After all, we're all fine.
Sorry.
Oh!
Anyway, next time.
Okay. You
Ah,
saved Merity and Quickie. Thank you.
amazing. Oh, Quickie's doing a little
No
dance,
need
too.
to thank us. Let's get back to Professor Mazette's house.
Mazette, got it.
You bet.
Reed's a
Reed?
little, he's a little slow on the uptake.
What? The earrings. Are you wearing them?
Yeah?
Pretty.
Hey, stop that. That tickles.
Same as Merity.
Well, yeah. We put these on so that we can communicate.
Reed?
Not a very sharp guy.
Huh?
I love the overlapping text boxes, too. Such a small
I'm
thing.
talking to Merity?
You sure are, buddy.
Will. Yes, you are talking. It's Merity. Reed, not too sharp.
And the first thing she ever said to me was, "Boy, you are kinda dumb."
Ow, ow, ow!
It's interesting, too, because that light is obviously important, and Reed says ow every time that Merity touches him and it emits, but it is left totally ambiguous at this point whether it is the light that is hurting him or if it's just that Merity is like holding on to him too tight, and that's uncomfortable. I love that scene so much, and it's such a cool scene for communication, so I'll just point out a couple of things right off the bat. First, how cool is it that the thing it takes for them to come to understand Merity is not only this act of saving her and actually like grasping intellectually what it was that she was trying to do. So again, tracking the meaning of an action that she was undertaking, similar to what we were saying about understanding Quickie through his actions on Wednesday. But also, it's this emotionally laden form of engagement where previously, you know, Farah was trying to help Merity just because she felt like it was the right thing to do, and she owed it to her in this kind of abstract way, not knowing her personally. And Keele clearly was interested in Merity as this kind of intellectual exercise and project to prove the truth of his research. But it was in that moment where they were actually seeing her as an individual and being invested in saving her, and even chastising her afterwards, saying, hey, what were you thinking? Don't go off and do that. You could hurt yourself. It was that kind of direct emotional interpersonal engagement, not dissimilar to everything I wrote about in my Tales of Hearts R study, that actually allowed the Oars earrings to function, and for the Kramels to actually recognize that these people were on the same page and to intelligibly communicate their signals back and forth between each other. Because remember, that's what's happening. It comes down to the Kramels recognizing their empathy. It's not something that's happening one-to-one between them. And notice, in terms of that mediation, it is exactly that understanding between the characters that also then makes accessible to us what it is that Meredy is saying. So is it that our relationship with her has changed? We did undertake this boss battle to help the party defeat the thing that was threatening her, but it also seems like it's their understanding of Meredy which is now cascading through to us and allowing us to see and make sense of how she's expressing herself differently. So going from what the avatars in the game are grasping about her up outwards to us engaging with the game from afar. But notice and remember, it doesn't always work that way, because our understanding of her in the beginning, in that cutscene prior to the avatars, already had a certain level of intelligibility, but not even this level, because that was still subtitles, whereas now we're just getting her speech pseudo-directly, albeit mediated by Kramels. So we're getting a lot about the different levels of deriving meaning from forms of expression, and also the emotional and empathetic preconditions for really understanding someone. It's not just a matter of finding the right cipher to decode. It's a more personal and intimate activity than that. That is a good question, Grail. My sense of that, I don't think you're forgetting anything. My sense of that, consistent with what we were just talking about, is I think it's one of those things where, yeah, they now have this emotional connection and they can be on the same wavelength as her, but they still come from different worlds, different cultures. There's a lot at this point in the story in terms of their backgrounds that they don't know about each other, which creates this like stark gulf between who they are and how much they really know about one another. So in my first time through, and I'm still kind of thinking about it this way, I took the fragmented speech to more be an artifact of there still being like a lack of that interpersonal understanding than, you know, like an imperfect grasp of the language or something like that. Because based on the explanation we've gotten about the Oars earring, it can't be the case that it's just, oh, you know, Meredy has learned the language, but only a little bit. That's not the right direction to take the explanation. Okay, so we did that. Everyone's healed. We have the dark bottle on. I'm going to save one more time, and then we'll roll out, get some more training in on the way. And I'll say something good to think about in terms of the voice acting and its weird stiltedness is if we take that explanation of Meredy's dialogue being fragmented because of imperfect understanding between people, is there a way to pick up and apply that same explanation or something quite similar to why the voice acting doesn't always sound quite right to us as players? And I would put to you that there is, which is why I'm raising that. But we'll unfurl that more as we go on here. Okay, so if it weren't obvious, that was the second narrative checkpoint I was thinking about, was getting to actually understand Meredy. And if you listen, now you'll even hear her speaking intelligible things in battle. So it won't be the last time we hear Melnyx, but hopefully you will be subjected to much less of Aaron's silly, broken Melnyx dialogue, speaking of broken translations as we go forward here, because more of it should be in English. Yeah, we have more Panacea bottles. Thank you, Aaron, for remembering that poison is a big thing here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think it's the worms.
swallow dance. Ha, to.
Hooray! Quickie, we did it!
But the worms giveth and the worms taketh away. At least they drop panacea bottles. That's a kindness. It's true, I don't think I had the foresight to buy enough. I had the foresight to buy a couple, but I think we got enough from the worms to be in a good position.
Let's do it. To. Swallow dance. Ha,
Fireball!
ha,
Green blade!
ha, ha. Palm strike. To. Ha. We won!
How are we? I think we might be low on ingredients. Ah, we are. That's the other side of it. If we're going to lean into cooking, really have to be more proactive about stocking ingredients. Oh, that's the other thing I'm remembering. This is not a spoiler because I think it applies now, and I don't think the game ever explicitly tells you this, but I think this is one of the games where there are particular recipes that if you get characters to use them enough and give them enough facility with them, the characters will develop new recipes, which ends up being important for some quests. So I might take the weekend to look that up just so we can make sure we're doing the right stuff to set us up for success later.
Let's do it. Ha,
So I might be thinking of another one, but I don't think I am.
Aqua Edge!
to.
Demon Hammer!
Ha, to.
Oh, I believe that, Grail, and I would put good money on the fact that you are great at that, in large part thanks to the many really rewarding co-op opportunities it sounds like you've had. So I think that's one of the ways in which it just gives a totally different dynamic to it. Because then it's like, it's not just like you're supporting
Let's do it.
the party, you're supporting like a friend of yours who's taking ownership over, let's say, DPS, and you can communicate with in real time on the couch or in chat or something like that.
Aqua Edge!
To.
So that's the secret. I just have to do more co-op. Then I'd get over the hump with it.
Yes!
It'll be a hell of a restock when we get back to town, my friends. But the game is pretty kind with the amount of... Damn, we failed. It's kind with the amount of gold that it gives us. We're in a pretty good position right now. Does anyone have normal right now? No. But I should have remembered that omelets do heal abnormal status effects. That's good for when you're left with poison hanging on after battle or something. Oh yeah, to say nothing of the incredible flavor, like we've talked about in Discord before, of one friend
Sonic Fist.
controlling Luke and one controlling Tyr. I mean, there's so much magic there in terms of cultivating and validating their relationship, and probably even developing new contours to your relationship with the person playing through that kind of activity.
No problem.
Oh, she was really excited about that. No problem. I love it. Farah, I think you might be my favorite, but TBD. We've got a whole game left to see. Yay! That was rewarding to just one-shot 2 poisons with a meal. Keele, we've already seen Keele has a great catchphrase. Don't touch me. Or I know I'm right. I just want to understand the truth.
Let's do it. Swallow dance.
I think that's one of the things that, well, I won't say too much because we're just getting to know Keele.
Swallow dance.
But yeah, he has some things that feel a little catchphrasy.
Okay.
Do we have enough stuff for another omelet? Oh, no. Break my heart. I'm gonna save just in case things go horribly wrong. I know. RNG was in our favor, I guess.
Let's do it. Ha, ho, ha,
That was a huge blessing.
Wind blade!
ha, ha.
Because yeah, I think that's the reason that the villagers are so concerned about this area. Not just the fact that there are monsters, although it's a peaceful village, so I'm sure that's a big part of it, but it's also just like a toxic waste with all the poison. But we made it back to camp.
Tell me, have you really come from Celestia?
You bet.
Let me see some evidence.
Let's see some ID, Missy.
Bow IT? What's evidence?
This is also grade 2, so now that we have this framework of the Or's earring, keep in mind when and why it fails. It's pretty evident, right? I mean, we don't have to do a lot of work to unpack this. When there's some kind of concept or idea that Meredy is not familiar with, so it presumably doesn't have an analog in her life where she's from or what she's experienced, she defaults back to Melnyx because she doesn't have a way of relating to what that person is trying to tell her.
Then is it true the world is in danger?
You bet. No problem. The game with the most optimistic girls in the Tales of series, maybe.
What kind of technology does Celestia possess? What exactly is that stone attached to your forehead? Do all Celestians wear such a stone?
Immediately going into interrogation mode.
Come on, tell me!
Keele, rude.
She's not wrong.
Who's the rude one?
Come on.
You are.
Cool down.
Also, you pushed her like a mile away from you when she tried to touch you in the last area. Don't forget.
Say, Meredy, can you tell us the reason you came to Inferior?
That's how you ask a question like a normal human, Keele.
You bet. Meredy? Wanna stop the Grand Fall? Need help?
We have a new highlighted term. It is a really important one, as we'll come to see. The Grand Fall.
Grand Fall? That's something not found even in the Leonoa Encyclopedia.
Meredy has knowledge which exceeds the birth of Inferian research.
The Grand Fall is when Celestia and Inferior come closer together. And then,
Boom.
boom!
Inferior and Celestia colliding?
That's not what you want.
T-I-T-U Su, Dugati. You bet. Going to collide. Collide is very bad.
Now notice, there, the miscommunication might have gone in the other direction because, like I just pointed out, Meredy clearly has concepts of her own, things like the Grand Fall, which have no obvious analog in Inferian understanding. And so it's very likely that she fell into Melnyx there, not because Keele asked her something she was unfamiliar with, but because she was elaborating upon the cause or impact of the Grand Fall in a way that the party has no way of grasping yet from their own context and the world that they've grown up in.
That can't be.
There and here colliding? Are you serious? What's gonna happen? Are we all gonna be flattened?
No, worse. It'll go right to your thighs, and then you'll all be flattened. All right, that's my one SpongeBob joke for the night.
Why had the balance collapsed? Was it a side effect of the raised cranial pressure caused by globule distortion? Or is it that the localized stress from the cranial zone has caused a Dark effect in the Orbis barrier?
So remember, Keele has mentioned this thing called the Dark effect before. And I think it has something to do with the Orbis barrier, although the idea that he's speculating it was caused within the Orbis barrier implies it's a phenomenon that could happen elsewhere. But I don't think we've gotten enough, even peripherally explained, to get a sense for what the Dark effect is. Globule distortion, we have some idea of. We still don't know what globules are, but we know it's this kind of imbalanced pressure in like the energy flows and concentration of cremals, which can also be used for channeling arts, presumably, and things like that. And I think this is our first time hearing about the cremal zone, too. We don't know what that is.
Meredy, are you here because you know how to prevent the Grand Fall?
You bet. gather the greater Cremels in Inferia. If we do that, the collision will stop.
New term, greater Kramels.
Form a pact with the greater Cremels? What nonsense. It's impossible.
So between what we know about Kramels and what series regulars know about pacts, you probably already have a decent sense of where we're going with what those things are, those greater Kramels.
Cremels and people live in different worlds. That's especially true for greater Cremels. Making contact is hard enough. A pact? Forget it.
Different worlds. Remember, we kind of already had a sense of that because we know that Kramels are incorporeal, so presumably that implies some kind of spirit world or spiritual layer of reality outside of the physical, which is to say something metaphysical. Just pretty similar to, since we just came from Tales of Xillia, the sense in which there's a spirit realm there, which entities like Maxwell reside in, even though they can also manifest in physical forms when they so choose to interact with people in the created world.
Ai bunundi, bunainun, tiugusu. No problem.
Ah, she said fairest thing, and that's the one thing that we could understand. Isn't that so great? Did you expect to get this cool a portrait of what one-to-one character empathy looked like through philosophy of language this early on in a video game? Ah! Live for this, guys.
Celestian Cremel cage. Greater Cremels enter from here.
Suggesting that there's something different between the Kramel cages of Celestia and those of Inferia.
Are you suggesting that greater Cremels can be captured in a Celestia-made Kramel cage?
No. Cremel cages work the same way as Inferian ones do.
But no difference.
Parasol is different. With this, greater Cremels can enter the Cremel cage.
But she has one that's different in a special way. Parasol.
So,
Aha.
if I use this, even my Kramel cage will work?
You bet! Greater Cremel can enter.
Notice that looks a little bit like the world structure of Eternia. It has those two things that look like nodes held in balance with one another by those three rods.
In other words, we can save the world.
You bet!
Maybe we can
Our
become
heroes.
heroes. Yeah, no problem.
Keele, can you bring them back to reality?
There's just something so pure about how excited she is about that, with no tinge of egoism or anything ulterior going on behind the scenes. Like she really clearly is just so excited at the possibility that there's this awful thing that could happen, and because of who they are and how they've come together and just believed in each other already, they could be the ones to actually stop it.
We'll ask Professor Mazette the whereabouts of the greater Kramels.
That counter would just grow like arbitrarily large as we went on, dude. A counter for a catchphrase? That is a dangerous game.
Hey, you can't be serious. Go seek the greater Kramels?
If we can meet the greater Kramels, the truth about the Grand Fall may come to light. After all, the greater Kramels do not lie.
Keele, help Meredy. Will you help? Please, please.
Let me make it clear that this does not mean I believe all that stuff you've said.
This is interesting. So the only things we know so far about the greater Kramels is there's some kind of Kramel. They can be caged like other Kramels can, with a special kind of cage. And according to Keele, they cannot lie, which is a really interesting thing to know about a spiritual entity. What does that mean? Does that suggest that that they're not intelligent because an intelligent being would be capable of deception? Or is it just that they don't relate to the world through moral and immoral acts in the way that people do? So let's hold on to that.
I
I'd
only
forgotten
do
that.
this to discover the truth.
How stubborn can you get?
I have some thoughts on that, Grail. We can talk about it as we get a little bit further.
Come on, let's go.
But it is worth keeping in mind, right? that it's not as if they started out with this name and then adapted it to something different. They had spirits in Tales of Fantasia, and they went to something different here. Just like they had things like mana, and then in Tales of Graces, they went to Elith. And also something different than spirits. They had glyphs in Tales of Graces. Remember, one of the things we spent a lot of time thinking about in Tales of Graces was, okay, given that they already have this paradigm and this nomenclature for something that seems quite similar, why might it be different here? They're probably trying to suggest either that there's a difference in substance in what's being represented, or that they serve some sort of different function or thematic purpose in the world or story. So what is that? And I would invite us to consider that maybe the same questions could get us some traction on why these are called Kramels instead of spirits as we go forward. But we need to see more about them. We haven't even seen one of these Kramels yet. If they're even things we can see.
Sonic Fist. Triple Blossom.
For sure, but does that make... I wonder if that makes it harder for her to reposition when it comes time for her to heal people. Because I do like that she gets to the back before she heals. We can play around with it. Let's try. It looks like she does start out at the front right now. I mean, we could put her way at the front, but I'm a little worried about just making her enemy chow right off the bat.
Let's do it.
Yeah, she starts at the front of the pack.
Swallow Dance. Sonic Fist.
No.
Wind Blade!
Swallow Dance.
How was that?
I was really hoping we'd get some more levels down there. That's okay.
Let's do it.
The real levels were the friends we made along the way. And that was a great dungeon for making friends, wasn't it, my
Swallow
friends?
Dance.
Demon Hammer! We're not gonna lose so easily.
The way Queeky just perches on Merity in the celebration shot is great too.
Let's do it.
I will check after this. I was just wondering that because I feel like we haven't gotten new skills in a minute.
Sonic Fist. Swallow Dance.
I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of evenly distributing between her different attack types.
Yes!
Yeah, they're more or less even. I think simply because we only have the one art for kicking so far, Swallow Kick. Kick is lagging a little bit. They're more or less the same. How's Reed doing? Yeah, a little bit more slash than thrust. I would have expected the opposite actually, but he's been on auto. And I think they're the only ones who are like that. Yeah, because Merity and Keele are just mages. All right, back to safety. As far as I know, this thing she calls a parasol doesn't have any special features or functions that enable its use with the greater Kramels. What do you think, Professor? You must meet the greater Kramels. There is nothing more I can tell you. I understand. Take the parasol. Professor, can you tell us where we can find the greater Kramels? I know of one place where you might. Go out of Morlaix and go northeast for a little way, and you'll see Undini Stream. A familiar name. If you know, you know. Undini Stream. I can't remember if they say Undini or Undine in this one. I think Undini. We will see. If it's true that disaster is upon us and that Merity is the key to saving the world, I'm sure the greater Kramels will appear before you. Then, they must know much more than we do. Have you decided? Of course, we'll find them. You bet. Take this map. I'm sure you'll find it quite useful. Received Inferia map. All right. Thank you, Professor Mazet. Farah, I sense that you have the innate power to heal. I will teach you a new skill. I don't know how to thank you. Detoxify! Once we've already mastered poison, then we learn the skill to make it go away. Keele. It seems you've learned to communicate with Merity quite quickly. Huh? Oh, yes. We had help from a little incident. Remember those feelings and pursue the unknowable. That is true learning. And that's the kind of line I'll invite you to also remember, because keep in mind everything that we were talking about in that encounter. Mazet acknowledges and emphasizes that facility for communication comes from the feelings that were facilitated by the incident. But those feelings aren't enough. You have to hold them in your mind and continue to pursue those things which you don't know, to look beyond your own perspective and its limits. So emotion plus that impassioned curiosity equals communication, or true learning, as Mazet says. The unknowable? Perhaps someday you too will understand why I left the university. Yeah, that's important. I didn't quite characterize that yet. It's not even striving to learn things beyond that which you do know or beyond the limits of your perspective, but grounded by feelings and reaching towards the pursuit of things which we cannot know, suggesting that there are some limits to what it is that we can have that knowledge-based grasp of, but which maybe we can relate to in other ways. I think that's going to point to a lot of what it is to relate to each other, empathize, while also understanding the limits of our understanding, all those other good things we've been riffing on tonight. After Morlaix is Undini Stream. I never meant to come this far. Dude, you never meant to take one step. Yeah, no, you don't have to tell me that, Grail, but I appreciate you trying to preemptively coach. I know I can count on you for that. Well, we've come this far. We can't go back to Rashine's now. Merity's sorry. It is Merity's fault. Farah and Reed thrown out of village because Hiatus attacked. Ah, she was able to express his name. Hiatus. Is he the one that smashed the Elder's house? So he was after you? But why? Not ready to talk about that yet. Mazet is the source. He's the one who wrote all the primary sources. Come on, Grail. Huh? What's wrong? It's nothing. Come on, let's get going. The Undini Stream is northeast of Morlaix. I'll also point out Mazet is a great example of a mystic teacher in a game that is very mystically and esoterically oriented. Notice, for instance, how not only is he talking about how you need to emotionally interrogate your place in the world with humility and understanding that there are limits to things that you can know, but also understanding that there are particular conditions and relationships that are required before you can learn anything. So there's so much happening in that little scene. For instance, the fact that because of his relationship with Keele, he asks Keele to stay behind in both of the conversations that you have with him to express some teaching that only makes sense for them to share one-on-one with one another, and that the other group wouldn't be able to make sense of in the same way because they don't have the same kind of history. Or the way he calls on them to decide whether or not they want to pursue the greater Kramels. And even though he clearly knows more than he's telling them, he's saying, look, if you want to understand this particular thing about the nature of the world or what the Kramels can do for you, you have to ask that of the greater Kramels. I'm not the right one to tell that to you. All of these things in terms of the particular steps and the particular contextual interactions you need to have in order to acquire wisdom and new understanding in the right way is part and parcel of the kind of ladder of spiritual instruction that you get in esoteric traditions. And that if all goes to plan, we'll get in this game. Does Mazet have any more to say if we go back? Oh, I almost forgot. I have something that I would like to give you. It's a monster collection book, another optional collector book. With this, you can check the appearance and abilities of monsters you've previously fought. Try to complete the entire collection. It should be hard since I already forgot to use the lenses on the early ones, but it's nice to have. I think there may be an opportunity for us to hear it pronounced later, Grail, but for the life of me, I don't remember, so I'm just going with the phonetics. Which I think might also just be how it's, converted into, like, a Japanese dialect, because, again, my touch point is Yu-Gi-Oh! And, for instance, they have, like, a monster from the early Yu-Gi-Oh! Days who is very clearly modeled after, like, Hades, Lord of the Underworld. But in the game, he's called the Dark Ruler Hades. So it'll be interesting to hear how it's voiced if it comes to that. I wonder which university Professor Mazet is from. That's interesting, because I was going to say, I had the sense that Minchi was like the center of academia because it was the only university in the world, but that girl clearly implies there's more than one university. I think also the reason that I default to hiatus until proven otherwise is that, Hades, like, god of the underworld, I start to think right away of, his Roman counterpart Pluto, and that already has a place as a, like a summoned spirit in the King of Daemonium in the Xillia games, so I don't want to preemptively draw that connection if it's pronounced differently. I get a few more things for the road, and then I'm going to see how we're feeling. I'm a little conscientious of time, because I'm thinking if we start the next bit, it might keep us going for a while. And I'm also just a little anxious to try to get Evie out one more time before the fireworks start when the sun goes down. I'm actually amazed they haven't started yet, because living where I am, it can be pretty non-stop. But we'll see how we're feeling once we're all loaded up here. How are we on? Oh, we still have more gold. Maybe I'll do a more healthy restock than that. God knows we'll need it. If we round things out, what'll that take us to? That is a good point, Grail. Yeah, we're visiting a lot of towns that have pretty insular cultures. You might remember Tales of Hearts are also like that. Just like we have heard here, there's this central empire and a single empire, but there are also all of these satellite communities that are kind of beyond its reach and don't really have that much communication with one another. So I think that's an important strand to a lot of these games, and probably I would guess, but I would want to ask Dan, like Japanese storytelling, at least in games more broadly, the idea of like, what does the interplay look like between like a hegemonic empire that has this sort of self-proclaimed importance in the world and all of those other communities and cultures which are sort of forced to coexist with it, but maybe don't actually interact with it all that much. Puni towns, yes, thank you. It's a clearer way of saying what I was talking about. Yeah, I just heard a firework. Have you been hearing more of them? I thought I turned off the noise canceling on my headphones, but it might just be that the game is drowning it out for me. Oh, I feel bad for Evie. I wasn't paying that much attention. Is there more stuff that I could sell down here? I don't feel bad knowing where we're going next about buying all those items, but I would like to have a little more gold on hand to buy food supplies. Yeah, we have a little bit more we can sell. Oh, we can equip that to Merity. That's good. Oh, and that's a weapon for Farah. That's great. I didn't know that. But we picked up 2 of them. We only need 1. Cool. All right, it's not a lot, but that'll help. Oh, you're hearing that? Well, you're later than I am, so it's probably like dark there. It's still kind of sunset here. I mean, the crazies will start at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon sometimes, so that's, like I said, I was expecting they would start earlier, but I haven't really heard that many. I heard one like a couple minutes ago, but I think I might still have a window to get Evie out. Okay, now we should be able to rest at the inn, get some food supplies. Yeah, then I think we should be good for Monday. There's no way we can get through the next part in 20 minutes. And I'm afraid I might fail and we have to reset anyways. That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder why you feel that way. Because I almost remember us having conversations going through Xillia about the world feeling pretty isolated and like no one had a sense of how big it was or where like other places were a lot of the time. Is that not your recollection of it? Maybe I'm just misremembering. I feel like some early stage conversations were like that. And then Vesperia, yeah, I think that's probably more of a, like an intentionally subversive thing, because you're right, like it's set up from the beginning like, oh, everyone stays inside the barrier, they're safe, but what you quickly learn is so much of the world is defined, again, like juxtaposition against empire, and in that case, guilds, and all of the guilds have their own little cultures and are oftentimes very mobile, so that's probably why you feel that way in Vesperia. Xillia, I'm less sure about. Yeah, I mean, that's how you meet Carol in the first place, right? Just on the road, on an adventure. Not totally on guild work, but I think he proves the point all the same. Anything else to say before we head out? Even a rural place like this is what we consider as our city. Here you go. So more about sort of the self-contained culture where they don't really interact with anyone else because they don't feel like they need to. They have everything they need. Anything else to say? No. It's funny because actually, as I prepare to move to LA, that's a lot of what one hears about LA is, yeah, like every neighborhood is its own city because it just, like it's so hard to travel anywhere because the traffic is so bad, and so they're like pretty insulated cultures in different parts of the city. Oh, sure, yeah, and I do feel like Xillia 2 is a whole different ball game because then the worlds really have been like pretty intentionally integrated in a way that doesn't hold in the first game. So yeah, I would certainly agree with Xillia 2. Alright, save it in, save it out. Alright, this might be a fool's errand, but I think this is a good point to wrap up for the evening, and then on Monday we will be on our way to try to meet the first Greater Kramel, presuming there's more than one, but they've already suggested that there probably is more than one. But the first one seems to dwell at this Undini's stream, I think was the descriptor of it, a little ways from Morley. So, which Greater Kramel could lurk there? I wonder. surely she would not be the skill check that Aaron has been bigging up for most of this stream. I don't know what you're talking about, but you know, the good thing is this is kind of the payoff to Aaron not going in blind. Besides being able to frame and provide theoretical background and didactic gaming and all of that stuff, he also knows when we're going to have to suck it up and force our way through. He might even know enough to set aside some time to grind a little bit on his own to make it more palatable, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I hope this has been a fun time. Listen, that would be hilarious, Grail. And I'll say, I mean, like, jokes aside, I mean, that's a very funny joke, so don't put the joke too far to the side. But jokes aside, I think that's a really good attitude to take on with this game, because so much is going to feel familiar, but I will keep putting to you, maybe it's not quite the same, and maybe that's part of what makes this game quite uniquely interesting and also quite uniquely informative with respect to the other games, because it shows you what the Tales of series has to say when things are structured just a little bit differently, so you can appreciate what it meant for them to be structured the way you're familiar with, all the more for having the contrast class available. So it's going to be a really fun way to start the week. Now we are able to communicate a bit with Meredy. If you know Tales of games, and you even have been tracking what we've been talking about so far, you know that the struggle to understand and achieve pure communication is far from over. But we made a big step with the help of the Oars earring and the Cramels and that emotional bonding. And we learned a little bit more of what's at stake. We got this picture of the cosmos. We got this understanding of the Great Fall, the Grand Fall, excuse me. Not sure exactly the why or the what or even the consequence of that, but boom sounds bad. So, but on the optimistic side, and the inimitable Farah Orsted will be our guide for that. There's a hope that we actually have a path to do something about it, and maybe even the cast, and maybe even with our help, we and the cast can become heroes. This was a really fun kickoff for me. I hope that it was for you. I hope that this slightly different method of working through my thoughts on the game and what really drew me to find meaning in it the first time is interesting and productive for our journey together. But definitely, please remember, it's a real-life JRPG party, so don't be afraid to engage. Even if you haven't played any of these games, I would put it to you that this is also a great first game to experience. So if you're having fun lurking, that's all good. But if you want to join, I would love it if you did. As with Meredy, right? The first step is saying something, even if it takes effort to achieve understanding after that. It always starts by saying something. That's right. And I saved the most important thing for last, Grail. We met the game's most important character and the most famous character in all of Japan, Keele Zabel. But we're going to find out so much to fall in love with all of these characters. It can feel like maybe they're less fleshed out in the beginning of this game, just because it feels like an earlier game in so many ways. But believe me when I say that along some dimensions, I think they even have more depth than some characters later on in the series. And I'm really excited to explore that with you. Remember, as we wrap up, I'll put a couple more pushes. Do go ahead and no, it's not going to stop being funny. We're going to do it for the entire playthrough. So the fact that you made it your Discord profile picture, Grail, is great too. And speaking of Discord, I'm really going to be trying to make the most of, the whole Discord, and there are many great conversations going on there, but I think the Tales of Praxis channel will be a great venue for working out some more of the theory and background as we play through this and save the stream time for actually working through this stuff. So please join. It's a great community. So many thoughtful gamers with such different backgrounds and interests. I have learned a lot just by being a part of it. So I hope you do too. And again, there is a whole wealth of written analysis working out the philosophy and thematic content and value that I see in the Tales of series, with many more articles planned and planning on the way, which is part of what I'm doing with Tales of Eternia, obviously. But I encourage you to go to withaterriblefate.com to check those out. The best way to get into it is the last thing I wrote, which is also the largest for the Tales series so far. But really, I do continue to think Tales of Hearts R does something uniquely powerful in making sense of why this series has this special and unparalleled way of equipping us to invest in each other through the characters and to create this broader community that actually does have moral and emotional value through our fictional engagement and metafictional engagement. And it's something that I have seen echoing through many of the other games, including what we're up to in Tales of Eternia with this talk of emotional bond formation underpinning communication. So follow that. You'll get to something I'd love to talk with you about, which will be useful for this and your other journeys in gaming, and also just the broader library of Tales of Praxis content is easily accessible from there. But until next time, my friends, we're going to be rolling into our first full week of this, which promises a lot of progress. We're at the tip of the iceberg in so many of these discussions, and many haven't even come up on our radar yet. So it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, kicking off at 7 p.m. Eastern. I so hope to see you there. And it'll be easier to be in touch and to be more in touch with the conversations and that really valuable communication, which this is all about if you're on the Discord too. So that's my last pitch for that. But until Monday, I so hope you think well and game well and have a great weekend. Be good to yourselves and each other's people. Be good to yourselves and each other. You can tell I'm getting tired. It's time to go on to the next phase of my night. And do your best to embody the ethos of whichever your favorite character in the series or in games more broadly is, whether it's Farah Orsted or some lesser character. Kidding, of course. But you could do far worse than Farah no matter where you stand. All right, my friends. Until next time, this has been Tales of Praxis. I've been your host, Aaron Suduko. Go to With a Terrible Fate if you need any more game analysis in your life between now and then. Cheers, my friends.